Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the show today. Very happy to have you all here with us. Hopefully the weekend was good for you. Mine was a little bit, well, it was a lot wet. It was a wet weekend, but that's all right. I had kind of a holiday week last week where my kids showed up, which means I didn't get a vacation at all. Yeah, yeah. Do you know how often I get vacate days off? I mean, would you like to know that? I mean, rare, super rare.
Extremely rare. Yep.
Uh, but I have to burn it for kids. God damn it.
Yep.
It's my own damn fault. I
Hey,
did it.
it is. It is.
Yeah,
You created these things,
I
literally
did. I
created them.
did. But oh well. Man, it's nice to see the kids, of course. But it's been a while. I kind of want to just take like a week and just go someplace and be catered to.
Just
I
randomly fly to Malta and kill
well,
somebody. We know what you're up to,
yeah,
Chester. We
yeah,
got
yeah,
you
yeah,
figured out.
yeah, yeah, I know. Well, sometimes I do have to travel, but I'm not talking about work travel. I'm talking about just go somewhere and relax. You know?
Well, see, the secret, Chester, the hidden secret of the modern age is to make your work travel into your relaxed travel.
Yeah, fair.
Somehow blend
Yeah.
them together so you can pretty much always be relaxing.
Well, when I went over to France for the the conference, I did
Mm,
take some time with my wife and do that. So I do try to do that sometimes. But
yeah,
that was the
it's
last
fun.
time. So.
It's a shame. My poor father. A complete subject change here, but you mentioned France. He had scheduled in late uh early 2020. He had scheduled to go over to Europe
Mm,
to go on a nice little like World War II hotspot tour of all the places my grandpa was at in World War
hmm.
II because he just always wanted to. And then COVID happened, so he couldn't. And then he died.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah,
Those things do
so he never
happen.
got to.
Yeah, those things do happen, but that's a bit dour. But nevertheless, I wouldn't mind doing that either. But I don't know how much you really want to travel around Europe. I mean, I was just outside Paris. I went into Paris, of course, for
Mm,
croissants, because Paris.
mhm, mhm.
Copenhagen was way better, by the way. But one thing that I have to head to, I don't know if I'm allowed to complain about it. Yeah, Paris had a
Uh-oh.
lot of not French in it. Can I put it like that? I'll put it like that.
Yeah, it's not a French city anymore, just like London isn't an English city anymore.
No.
Um, Globalism at work doing its lovely, lovely, lovely thing that it does,
Mhm.
which only seems to ever go one direction.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and it used to be the problem was the gypsies, or excuse
Yeah.
me, the Romani. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're just stealing everything constantly. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes.
Well, good. Okay. But it used to be that used to be the problem. You had to keep your eyes open because they would just steal you blind, and they're really good at it. So that used to be the problem, but now it's a bigger problem. And whose fault is that? Oh, that's right. We blame Merkel, but I'm sure someone else is to blame. I'm sure.
Well, it's been long since that a government in the West has been anything other than customer relations. That's basically all they
It's
are
true.
at
Yeah,
every level. If you know their name, they don't have any real authority.
that is
And
fair.
anytime somebody tries to get in there
I'll
and
be back in a
flex a
minute.
little authority, they get every single possible dirty trick you can imagine pulled against them up to and including uh, you know, they get suicided, things of this nature. Uh, so Merkel might very well be to blame. She may even be 100% on board with it ideologically, but the reality of it is she's a puppet. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows all these people are puppets. It's not. It's like it's one of these weird things where we all just kind of make believe that we still live in some form of democracy or some form of republican system. Yet we all know it's nonsense. There's a reason all these people are friends. There's a reason all these people have known each other for years and years before they become officially positions of power or whatever. Like the presidents of America specifically, for the last at least 50 years, probably a lot longer,
More.
have all known each other
Oh yeah,
and known each other
they're all
very
related.
intimately. They've had parties, they have distant relations, they go to each other's homes, they, probably do all sorts of weird stuff to children together. Like it, this isn't even a this not even conspiracy theory, it's a fact.
It is.
It's
It
an
is.
unmitigated fact. They don't
Mhm.
even deny it. Look at the Bush, Clinton, and Obama. They're always taking pictures together and hanging out.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Oh yeah. And they're all they're all related to a certain Scottish family.
It-
In that
It's
interesting?
weird.
But then again,
Weird.
so am I though. Don't tell anybody.
Oh, that
Yeah,
explains everything.
yeah,
That
it does.
explains all the trips to assassinations and
Yes.
all of it.
But the Bruces seem to have been quite prolific, uh,
Yep.
especially by president making. Yeah, no, it's all ridiculous. You know, one of the of course, today we're going to getting into wrestling part two, and a couple of little things, but we're just warming up here, let people come in. But
Yep.
I know when I left to go get my coffee, you were talking about world politics, so I will just
Mhm.
play off of that. But I don't know if you remember, but it wasn't that long ago, 6 years maybe, no,
Mhm.
7, something like that, 6 years ago. There was a hot spot in the world, which there always is. I mean, right now you got Sudan blowing up, you got Somalia, Ethiopia. I mean, Ukraine, whatever. But there was a place that's over here in Asia, and a little place called Burma, right?
Yep.
In the I think it was, what is it, 89? They changed it to Myanmar or something like that, 91, something like that. But anyway, and they went through all their problems and troubles from since the 50s, really, after getting out from underneath British rule and the communism and all their troubles, right? And then in what 2011, you got that lady in there, the princess. You remember her?
Mhm.
Right?
I
You
do.
remember her on
Yep.
the TV because she's a little princess because it's her daddy. Just probably none of you know this because the news is stupid and never mentioned. Why is it this woman? It's just a woman. They don't care about the history. Her father's
Mhm.
the one that was able to wrest control away from the British. He's the hero, right?
Yep.
And then the military killed him. Assassination. But still,
As you do.
as you do. Still, he's a
Yep.
national hero, and he's beloved by the Burmese people for good reason, right? I mean, but that's why her. If you ever wondered her, because from day one that I saw her, I was like, boy, is that a naive person? That's an
Mm.
obvious princess who doesn't know what she's getting herself into? And of course, I was unfortunately, as usual, Thundera, 100% right. And
Yep.
she with her power with the people, she was able to, in essence, install herself as a monarch, right? Is what she was
Yep.
able to do. And of course, the military didn't like it, and things went. And then, what, 2 years ago, the military came in, and yet again, the most favorite thing of third world countries, a coup d'etat, right, came in again, right? Just a couple of years ago, right? Matter of fact, it was kind of, I think it was one of the most comedic junta takeovers because if you remember that video where the little Burmese girl was sitting there doing her little fitness thing, and on
Mm.
that big road, and in the background
I
we
do.
saw the junta vehicles going in to just take over the government. Um, that's unique. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she she
Yep.
she moved very oddly. I thought she was an alien, but nevertheless, um, so for the past 2 years, right, it's just completely evaporated. Any kind of progress that they had is totally blown out. All these different groups are now fighting against each other, where before it was one thing or another. But however, in between all that, about 6 years ago, the UN, she called Kofi Annan in to come and help because she was just trying to reinstate her power. She was trying to gain more power. Said, "Look, I brought important foreigners in, whatever."
Mm.
And So she brought him in. Of course, then they started looking, and paying attention, and then the Muslims said, "Look at that." Now, they were trying to make a deal with the Muslims at that time. Keep this in mind, right? The government, not the UN, the government, right? But
Hmm.
the Muslims, they're stupid. And instead of saying, "Oh, we're about to get better treatment than we've had here in a while," they're like, "No, the United Nations is in Burma. We need to make noise so we can be seen. Let's burn down villages and kick off a civil war." Right? Now this
Yep.
went on, and what did the UN do? What did these European fuckers do? Has it been 50 minutes? No, I don't give a shit. Instead of helping Burma, or as they want to be called now, Myanmar, which I'll never accept, but uh, instead of helping them, instead of trying to make peace, what do? They put heavier sanctions on them. They chastise them. It's just this horrible attack, not once mentioning the fact that all this shit kicked off because of the Muslims wanting
Yep.
attention. And it's clear that the Burmese army was not capable of dealing with the problem 100%. They could kind of keep it somewhat isolated up there in the northwest, but they couldn't really deal with it. Their military wasn't strong enough. So more and more people died, more towns set to the torch, etc., etc., etc. And of course, I am sure, and you know as well as I do, that some of those European nations were giving the Muslims weapons and shit. You know they were, right?
Of course.
And they're the ones that started it. This shit wasn't going on. Now, did they get treated the best, or did they have? You're like, oh, hello, fellow Muslim. Probably not. But they weren't
Mm.
murdering them. They weren't at war, right? They weren't.
Yep.
This kicked off because the Muslim wanted some attention. They said, oh, let's burn down a village or two and get some attention, right? And this shit went on to the point that we now are sitting in a fully exploded Burma where there are dozens of factions running around murdering everything. And does anybody do anything at all? No. Of course not. So, this little story I just went through. Let's see. Let me change. Let me take the label off and stop calling it Myanmar. Let's call it Sudan. Oh, I'm sorry. How about Somalia? Oh, I'm sorry. How about Ethiopia? Oh, I'm sorry. How about Sri Lanka? Same
Yep.
ass damn stories. These frickin' junta, coup d'états over and over and over and over again. And every time the Western powers do nothing to help, all they do is go in there and say, "What can their little greedy fingers get?" They never help anybody. Do not do not be disillusioned by this. They do not help anybody. It's only what can we get out of it, right? It's sad because I'm an American
Yes.
and I want us to be the good guys, but we ain't. We ain't.
Well, the only way for us to be the good guys would to become Rome and just start effectively conquering these places and installing proper forms
Governors.
of government and
Yeah.
things. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is,
Maybe.
I know people like to shit on, especially nowadays, Rome is for being evil imperialists. You understand they were saving the damn world, right?
Well, the British
Like these
did similar
people,
things. That's true.
yeah, these people were savages, barbarians, but to the absolute 100% degree, all the way up to human sacrifice and everything else. They were,
Oh yeah.
if you can name an evil humanity could do, the Mediterranean folk were doing it,
Oh yeah.
and the Romans were trying to stop it. Uh, by and large. Now, granted, they had a great benefit to themselves for doing so. It wasn't altruism that was driving them, but that's what they were doing. That was what, at least at the beginning, that's what they were doing. Now,
That's what
that
the
turned into
Senate
much
was
more,
doing. That's what the Senate was
yes,
doing. Yeah. Yeah.
yes. It turned much more, I don't know, malicious, I guess, later. But yes, originally that's what the expansions were about. They were trying to stabilize the frickin' world.
I don't.
And that would be the only real way for America to be able to do that. But the problem is our government is pure, unfiltered evil.
It
There's no
is.
way to get
Yeah.
around it. There's no way to, and denying it is just naive. The government we've had in place for at least the last 100 years or so, and it's been basically the same
100 years.
institutions.
100 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. A little over.
is just evil. I mean,
Well.
that's the only
Well.
word that fits. They
Well.
are evil.
Well. Think about this. If you go back to the 18th century, I'm assuming 19th century, right? There was no income tax, right?
That's right.
There was no property tax. There was no death tax. There was no carriage tax. Now, if you go back over in certain Slavic countries, there was a mustache tax, but that was because there
Mhm.
was a leader there who was very, very vainglorious.
Yeah.
Okay, but mustache taxes aside, um,
Mustache Texas. I love the pettiness. I love it.
I know it is so petty, but I mean, all this shit you live in is the past hundred years. It really is.
Yes.
It didn't exist
It's all new.
before, right? The entire run of the Roman Empire, which is, 1,000 years, right? More than 1,000 years,
Yep.
really. It's like 1,200 years.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the Holy Roman Empire ran about the same amount of time, huh? Isn't that
It's interesting
interesting?
how
The
that works.
echo of it.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, anyway, but they ran that entire time. You know what their tax was the whole time? Would you like to know? It didn't change, by the way.
What was it?
10%.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah, and that's for, commodities, business-based stuff. The average
Chester,
person went and got bread. You didn't pay tax on bread.
you know how atheists, so, well, some of them, like the anti-theists, hate God. They hate even the like, especially the biblical God. They really don't like him. They're not a
Mhm.
fan of him. They say he's an evil,
No,
terrible monster, a horrific being.
I
Is
like the
Yahweh?
blue version, but go ahead.
He only asks for 10%. That's it. He said,
Yep,
just give me 10%. You can have the rest.
because more than that is considered usury, right?
That's right.
But yeah, no, it's insane the world we live in, dude. Yeah,
It
no,
is.
I know all about Woodrow Wilson. That dude is the one who needed to get shot. I
Yeah.
said it. Go ahead,
Well,
come
the
at me,
reason he
YouTube.
didn't get shot is because he did what the Federal Reserve banksters wanted. Or I guarantee you he would have got shot.
Yeah, that's
That would
true.
have
The stash
happened. I
tax
mean,
line saucer. Yeah,
this guy, he knew it too. Like he knew exactly what he was doing, and he hated himself to the day he died because of it.
I'm
Because he
sure.
said it. I betrayed my country.
You
That's what I did.
did.
He
You
knew what he did.
betrayed the world, asshole, because they didn't
Yeah.
stop with America.
No.
But the interesting thing, the reason I mentioned Burma or Myanmar
Yep.
is because this kind of nonsense is going on. America is currently involved in 9 to 13 conflicts. I mean, we're adding them all the time. So, but the reason I mentioned that one is because it's such a juxtaposition to its neighbor. Now, Siam or modern Thailand, which is another name change I don't care for. But Thailand and Burma have been kind of at each other's throats for a very long time, right? They are the consummate enemies, and they're literally. It's like if you look at an American state and two state lines that are right next to each other. It's exactly how it works with them, right?
Yep.
And they've had trouble for a very long time. Matter of fact, the great famous white elephant idea, which has been put into anything from Christmas party, events to, movie concepts, right? The white elephant thing comes out of, the Siamese king tricking the Burmese, right? But anyway, but if you look at them today, they're gorgeous places, by the way. They're
Mm.
beautiful, ancient, old world structures everywhere, dude. It's unfortunately a lost empire, really, is what it is. But if you look at them side by side, right, and they literally are next side by side, right? Thailand is a beautiful, happy, peaceful, safe place. They're called the kitchen of the world because of all the amazing amounts of foods they produce. The food's
Mm.
good as well. From north to south, everything is good. The crime rate is very low. It's super safe. It's gentle. It's a really nice place, actually. I'd suggest you take a trip. It's great for wedding anniversaries, or a honeymoon. Thailand's wonderful. So you got this beautiful country, peaceful, happy. They're happy people. I mean, if you go to
Mhm.
Thailand, it actually being a Yankee, because I'm a Yankee, going to a place where everyone's smiling all the goddamn time. It's a bit annoying,
Yep.
but if you can get past that, and then right next door, war, death, violence for frickin' what, 70 years.
Yep.
Literally, imagine your state border. On one side of it, happy, smiling people. The other side of it, nothing but death and violence. Imagine
Misery.
misery. Same
Yep.
people, Same language, basically, right? Accents,
Yep.
who gives a shit? It's the same language, same foods, everything's same. But yet you have one that is a perfect example of ultra happiness. Probably one of the matter of fact, if you're over the age of 50, Thailand has a special little program where you can go and retire in Thailand cheap.
Very cheap.
Might want to think about it. A lot of people are
Yep.
doing it. But right next door, you have this constant war, and no one does anything about it. Why? Why do you think it is? Would you like to guess?
Well, if I had to guess why America does very little to nothing about it is because we have very little to gain.
Well, that's true. They do have a lot of natural resources, especially for making the modern cell phones. So there is
Mhm.
some resource you could pull out of there. Mainly, they sell it to China. But the real reason is this. I'll put it right out. It's very simple because right now China can't jump themselves into the Indian Ocean very easily because they have to go through the Myanmar Straits. No, I mean not the
Mm,
Myanmar Straits, the Malaysian Straits, which go
mhm.
through a country down there of Malaysia and Indonesia who don't care for the Chinese very much. So
They're not friends.
they're not friends. So they can't just
Mhm.
bustle their way through that pass. They're restricted. However, they've been
Yep.
trying for a very long time to put themselves a navy base up there in the north so that they can just jump the entire thing and have all their oil and all their surplus and everything come right through Myanmar. And
Right.
there is an oil line that's going through anyway, although this war, I don't know how safe it is. But this is why the Europeans don't want Myanmar to have peace, because if they do, they'll continue that deal with China because that's beaucoup money, right?
Yep.
And let China be able to jump the whole thing and just move in the Indian Ocean as they like. That's the reason. It's all about caging up and corralling China. It has nothing to do
Boxing
with
them
these
in.
people whatsoever. And for decades and decades, we've let them waste away without helping at all. I mean, it's
This is why I'm saying
insane, dude.
I'm okay with imperialism. I'm not okay with whatever the hell America's been doing because it's
Mm,
not imperialism. If it was actual imperialism, we could take these places and tie them up, lock them up, do what we need to do so we have them under control. But we don't do that, and it's really annoying. All it
yeah,
does is waste our blood and our literally our blood and our treasure. And the American people is who I'm talking about when I say are. What the
mm,
hell do we get out of it? We go all over the world on these adventures all the time,
yeah,
so corporations can get fat and rich, and the American people get a bunch of dead kids,
yep.
like
No, that's what we get.
on our hands,
That's what we
a
get.
bunch of dead
Yeah.
children, and our own children get killed.
Yeah, that's right. No, 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 no. I know, and that's not new. That type of thing's been going on forever. But it's just really disgusting. However, to be fair, Thailand is coming up. They're bristling with wealth and success. Vietnam is kind of learned their lessons, and they're taking lessons from Thailand, and it's becoming a wonderful place. Cambodia is trying to
Yep.
latch on to that. I don't know that Laos will because the priests there have such a death grip on the culture. Really don't think I wouldn't expect
Well, there
anything out
was
of
a
Laos.
time. There was a time when priests had a death grip on our culture too, and
It's true.
eventually the money men came in. And were like, "That's enough of that," and effectively
That's right.
bought them all out, and took everything over.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't I don't expect it to happen anytime soon though.
It's
But
very interesting to watch, though, that the principles of the West, which is what these principles are that these countries are using, so definitely not Eastern principles,
yeah,
work with every person, group, all people who implement them. And the more you implement them, the more they work. It's shocking to watch the West abandon them
mhm.
and then watch the East all over it implement them, and now they're coming up.
They are.
Another great example, Singapore. Singapore's rich as shit.
Yeah, they're also a bit of assholes, though, to be fair.
Yeah,
They make
but
trouble.
they're rich as shit
They
for it.
are. They are. They are. Well, if you go look at all those British and Dutch, yeah, safe harbors that they built in Asia, they're all mega
Yep,
places now. They've come
yep.
up, but I'm just saying that
They learned the
Southeast Asia,
lessons.
they did. The Southeast Asians are coming up, and hopefully we won't get anybody go in there mess with it. at least until I die. After I'm dead, well, whatever. But because Southeast Asia is really starting to come up, and it's nice too. Because I know you guys probably don't have experience with it, but they're really sweet people. They
Mm.
really are nice, kind people. They're smiley, happy. Their food is awesome, dude. Um, eh,
Well, that right there is the one thing that I think gets overlooked when people look at history, historical rising tides, we'll call it, of nations and areas, is it's the people that do that.
mm,
It's not just the ideas. The ideas are what they are, but they're just ideas. It's when people are like what you're saying right there, where they're grateful, they're gracious, they're kind, they're open. That is when places rise. When places fall, the people turn every time throughout all of history. Like you've even mentioned it. If you look back in the day, like during the fall, quote unquote, of Rome, one of the many, in other places, they turn inward. And not in a like, I'm trying to be a better person way, in a I have all the answers way. They become very narcissistic, and then and the affluence turns them into this weird deviant sex stuff that we see all over the West. Uh, in the East, who doesn't have the hang-ups about sex like the West does, at least not in the same way, doesn't have this problem as much, and the people are kind, they're charitable, they're hardworking,
they are.
uh, and those sorts of things are irreplaceable. It doesn't matter how good your ideas are. It doesn't matter how strong your this is, your military is. None of that matters if the people suck. If the people are just not good people, if they're out for themselves, they're duplicitous, they're low honor, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter how good your structures and your systems are because they're just going to shit all over it.
You mean
And
like Haiti,
yeah, like that you read my mind, like Haiti, like most of Africa.
Eritrea, Sudan,
Yeah, these
Chad?
places suck because the people there suck. And no one wants to say that kind of stuff because it sounds mean and it sounds like you're being racist. No, I'm not. Because there's other people of the same race, like you just said, exact same place effectively, yet one side's brilliant, bristling, and happy, and the other side's misery.
Yep,
There's a reason for that.
that's true.
like,
That's true. Like the Ethiopians have come up quite a bit, to be fair.
yep, yep,
And they're right in the middle of all that hotness, right?
yep.
But yeah, no, these, of course, we're preaching to the choir here. But it's also interesting the interference, and I really hope that, especially with Southeast Asians, they'll learn that just stop interacting with these jagoffs from the UN, dude. Just stop it,
Yeah,
right?
just leave them
Because
alone.
they're
Yep.
jagoffs. Like, let me give you an example. Here in Southeast Asia, well, let me just say the Malay culture, all right, because
Mm,
that covers a very large area. They have a history of, they'll in essence rent their children out to bring money into the household because these are relatively poor people. Their structure is different than ours, right? It's very family based because everyone needs to bring money in for it to everyone to be able to survive.
mm,
And they'll rent their kids out. So the kids during seasons will go help with the harvests and of all different kinds of things, right? They'll do this
right.
because they all are renting themselves out, as we all do, right? That's what we do. You're renting yourself out. It's called a job, right?
Yes.
But because we have these Western ideas that children shouldn't be worked for the family, and it's not like these kids are they're dying in the fields. It's not the fact at all. They're
Mm,
helping with the little things, right? So that the
hmm
adults can do the manual heavy stuff, right? But
Right.
but for some reason, the UN groups have got in their head with one little type of thing that the Malaysians do that you and I wouldn't agree with, right?
Hmm.
But there is a small portion of them that will rent their children, out for sex stuff. And
Ooh.
it's like an apprenticeship. I know I understand it's wrong and weird. I get it, but I mean, let me finish.
Hmm.
They take it like an apprenticeship, and eventually these child prostitutes become adult prostitutes, right? It's seen as a profession, right? Now you and I wouldn't agree with this, and I think a lot of Western people don't agree with that. I don't have a problem with prostitution personally, but I do think there should be an age limit on it. But
Yes.
with the Malay people, they don't see it that way, right? It's just their culture. All right. Anyway, now This happens all over Malaysia, right? With child prostitutes, and like I said, the family is involved. They stay at home and they go to work, right?
Right.
I mean, just understand the situation. This isn't slavery. This isn't white slavery. It's a completely different conversation, right? It's considered work. Now, this happens all around Malaysia. People don't talk about it, right? Because it's taboo to us Westerners, our Protestant culture, our Christian culture. However, for some reason, they're focusing on Cambodia and trying to pressure and strong arm Cambodia to stop doing it. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand the Western stigma to it, but 100%. But why only Cambodia? Why just
Yeah.
Cambodia? Why not Laos? Why not Thai? Why not? Of course, we can't do anything in Myanmar. Why not? The Philippines and Malaysia and Indonesia. Why just Cambodia? What's the point? You understand? We would agree with that. I get that, but why just Cambodia,
Right.
right?
Well, and also it's again, it's half measures, right? They want to go out and they want to do this thing where they pretend like they're doing something. The UN is notorious for this. They pretend like they're doing good, and really all they're over there doing is typically stealing their resources to give off to their corporate masters or to off to whoever,
Yeah, there must be
whoever
something.
actually sent them in.
Yeah, I haven't really looked into
Because
it too deeply. I bet you there is some resource there. I bet you they found oil or
because if
something,
they,
huh?
like I said, if they
Yeah,
really wanted to stop it, truly stop it, we would go stop it. This
yeah,
idea that the West isn't crusading, I mean, literally, we call them the Crusades for a
right,
reason.
sure.
And the British nearly bankrupted their entire empire trying to end slavery.
Well, and they
They
they ended a lot of really ugly practices around the world. Let's be
Yes,
fair. Yeah, yeah. But whatever. Me personally, I kind of leave culture to do what they do. It's their thing. It's not our business really. But that's my take on it. But I understand the stigma. But they must have found oil or something. Something must be wanted in Cambodia, because otherwise, why focus on them only where you can go anywhere in that region and find the same thing going on, right?
yeah.
Um, Whatever.
Chester, I will be right back.
And now Lorenzo here said that many Lao men. Well, actually, in this area, especially Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. I don't know about Vietnam. I don't think so. They did go underneath the communist knife, didn't they? But in those places, all men have to serve 2 years in the priesthood academy. They all do that. Yeah. So it's weird because you have certain places where all men have to serve 2 years in the military, like say Korea, right? And I'm all for it. I think we should bring that back. Having all men train as a monk maybe is a better choice than military, but either way, it's about making sure your men are disciplined and capable. Is the whole point, right? And I think we should bring that back. I think yeah, America could benefit from everyone having to give 2 years of community service, whatever it is, but it be set up as a discipline building, experience. And Flying Social said, I grew up walking beans and harvesting watermelons, and it didn't hurt my development at all. No, of course it didn't. I did the same thing. I helped with the farm stuff and the cows and the chickens with my grandparents, and I helped on the fishing boats, mending nets, stitching skate and all that kind of stuff. I did too, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually good. Kids can be useful for in certain helpful things. The little fiddly stuff that the adults can spend their time doing the main thing and let the kids do the easy fiddly stuff. It's very very valuable, and we've always done this. But the West has this idea that you can't have children doing any kind of labor, and the rest of the world, especially what we consider as third, or I call it second world, use that because they have to, and there's no problem with it. And like I said, they'll do all kind of stuff. I was talking about the sex trade thing specifically because that's what the UN's all up in arms about with Cambodia. But it's a very small part of the culture. It's a very teeny little sliver. Most families don't do that with their children, right? It's a very small thing, but it's what the UN is really, really incredibly focused on in regards to Cambodia. But same thing goes on in Thailand, and they don't care anything about it, right? Now, one of the things the British did do, since Thunderdower was mentioning it, was it used to be even a little bit worse. The extra children of a family, because they'll have lots of kids. But the extra children, the unwanted children, often in the past were sold, just straight up sold for profit for the family. And that was going on a long time. The British really cracked down on that quite hard. It still happens a little bit today, particularly in northern Thailand. But that practice is greatly reduced by the British influence. But nevertheless, whilst we're waiting to hear him come back, we are going to talk about wrestling and other things today. We're just kind of first 30 minutes. We usually just warm up. But I did watch the coronation. My wife watched it actually, and I was there, so I watched it too. To be fair, it's
Watched
like
what?
the coronation of Prince Charles to
Oh,
King Charles III.
oh,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's last time it happened was 1953. I mean, it's a once a lifetime type of thing. My wife likes those things, though. I mean, Japan has royals too, right?
yeah,
Um, she likes their women like that shit. But whatever. I
yes.
did watch. It was interesting to see all the pomp and circumstance. I should have known better, but I didn't realize, that whole thing was more about much, much more about the baby Jesus than it was about King Charles. I thought that was really interesting because I kind of assumed that with Henry VIII kicking the Catholic Church out, making his own damn religion, that it would become more about the King and less about
Mm.
the baby Jesus King. But it wasn't. It was heavily oriented toward
Which is
King
funny
Jesus. Yeah, interesting.
with as as non-spiritualist, almost. I wouldn't even say atheist or even anti-theist. They're just non-theists.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so much of the West has become. That's very interesting that that particular rite, if you
Hmm.
will, that ritual, is still everywhere, all over,
Yeah,
still very laden with Christian iconography and Christian,
extremely
just
so. Yeah.
Christianity.
No, no, yeah.
It's fine,
But
very
then again,
interesting.
we did get to see a lot of artifacts, like we're talking like Roman artifacts that you do, that's what I was interested in, right? That you don't get to see very often, right? You're talking about, like the one of the books is like, 1400-year-old book, and you got a Roman scepters and actually there's an argument that the ring of what do they call it? Not a coronation ring, but it's has another name. That's actually coming from Greek times, right?
Mm.
So that's super, super old. Of course, you have the Stone of Destiny, which is one of the three meteors that fell, and that was we don't even know when that was. It was so long ago. We know where two of them are. One of them is kept in Scotland and brought down for the coronation, which we saw yesterday or the day before, whatever it was. The bigger one of bigger chunks is in Mecca, and a bunch of people walk around it once a year, and they put it in a black box. Just if you're curious, that black box that all those Muslims are circling around, inside is a meteor. It's one of the stones of destiny. They fell from the sky. God's gift. There were three of them. The third one, we don't know where it is. It is speculated that it's in the Vatican. It probably is.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yes. Yeah.
then and that thing's super ancient. Humans have been lugging those rocks around for a long time, right? So that's cool. Rome going to be the a segue into wrestling? Yes, it is. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're paying attention because some reason a Samoan is called Roman. I don't know why.
Well, he's half Italian too.
Yeah. Well, let's be fair. The Polynesians are Chaldeans. Sorry.
Yeah, don't tell him the
Shh.
secrets,
Shh.
Jesse.
Okay.
No, he's I think, or I don't know if he's half or quarter or something, but he's got Italian in him too. That's
Yeah.
probably
Why
why
not?
he's not, hideous. I mean, that's probably
He is a
why
beautiful boy.
they call him Roman.
Well,
Yeah.
he is a beautiful boy. Yeah. Well, now it's interesting that they might call him that. I don't know. That might even be his real nickname. Because if you go check all those Polynesians' DNA, you're going to find some interesting results that you would not expect. But they don't talk about that, do they? Okay. But anyway, yeah, thank you very much, Dave. Good job. But but yeah, I mean that. So the coronation was interesting. One of the coolest moments for me in it was, well, maybe the only cool moment in was they had like 4,000 plus members of the military, of course, involved in the parade and such. And at the end, the king comes out and he addresses his soldier because he's the commander in chief too, right?
Mhm.
And they all did the standard British, hip 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 hooray, that thing they do. And the hooray part, which all the military shout out, dude, it was powerful. It made you kind of remember that Britain used to be badass.
Used
It
to be.
it it really did have that feeling. It was really cool. But it was nice. Did your wife watch the coronation?
No, my wife watches very, very little uh, stuff of any kind. She doesn't have social media at all.
Oh
So
no, I
occasion, I
watched
mean,
the BBC.
the most she does is, and we don't have cable or any kind of TV service besides like Amazon or Hulu. We just don't watch that stuff at all. We're
Hmm.
not interested in it. I saw the final where he got his crown put on, that ridiculous nonsense thing they call a crown. Uh, Other than that, no, we didn't see any of it. I just saw that on Twitter. Somebody
Well,
shared
I had to watch hours of it.
it. It is funny to me that they have these rituals, yeah, that last hours. Why?
Well,
Does that make it more official if it takes all day? That makes it more official?
I guess. I have to say though, I mean, Charles is the oldest person to ever been crowned king. He is,
Yep.
as far as the British history goes, and it was wearing on him. He's old and he was tired. But I have to be. And Camilla did a good job, and I'm actually a little bit happy for them. I mean, Charles is a woke idiot. Let's be fair. But I feel bad for him and Camilla. What the queen, the previous queen did to them, it's not nice, right? And the
Mm,
fact that she, in the end, even though Elizabeth did everything she could to stop it, she became queen anyway. Because it was an interesting little thing noting, because I do know the history of this stuff, right?
mhm.
And of course, before this, they've been referring to her as the queen consort, which is an official term, but it's also a little bit of slap in the face, ain't it? Right?
Yep.
But however, during the ceremony and after, she was not called the queen consort. She was called the queen. So
Oh,
so Charles did something, right? So in
yep.
the end, Camilla won, and she, even though Elizabeth tried to keep her out, she became queen anyhow. Isn't that interesting? So
Mm,
good for her, I guess. But other than that, the only thing I would say about it was the music was fantastic. Super, super professional. Now, maybe you wouldn't care for that kind of music because it is old style. It's very old, but it was
mhm.
good, dude. It was really good. And I have to say, I listened. I didn't hear a single mistake from the musicians whatsoever. There was a couple little flubs with the choir, but not anything worth mentioning. But it was really well done. Solid music, and it was good to the head
That's good.
music because without that, my God, the
One
entire
thing about
crowd.
my wife specifically is she is one of the least uh, typical when it comes to that sort of thing. Like, especially, like you said, a lot of women like the royals and the pageantry and all the bullshit. She could not give less of a shit about it. She doesn't
Well,
care. She thinks it's a big waste of time, a big waste of money. She said there's so much better things you could do with this time and money.
yeah, I don't know
And
why
she's
Americans
correct.
care. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, no, she
I
is correct.
really don't know why Americans care, especially
It is weird.
because
It is
we
weird.
stomped their asses
Yeah,
and then saved them.
we're the only ones that aren't still part of the Commonwealth, right? Everybody else
Yeah,
still is. Don't misunderstand that. The United Kingdom is not talking about the little islands unification. There are what is it? 60 some odd 70 countries that are still part of the Commonwealth. Keep that in
that's
mind.
right.
We're not, but Canada still is. Australia, they still are, right?
It's funny when
India
Canadians or
even.
Aussies or New Zealanders get uppity, and I just remind them, the Queen's still on your money, guys. You're her
Mhm.
bitch,
Yeah.
whether
Well, I
you
mean,
like it or not.
they sit here and tell us that the Indians had a civil war like America to kick out the British. Did they? Because they're still part of the Commonwealth.
Hmm.
Interesting, right? They still speak
Very interesting.
English, you know. badly, but they still speak it. The
Hilariously, Chester.
hilariously, the Kentucky Derby. Yeah, I never understand why Americans, especially of course women, enjoy the whole royal thing. It's weird. We're Americans. We're anti that.
Well,
Didn't you learn that in school?
what the famous quote from old Mad King George himself, which is great American propaganda. I love how he decided he was insane. Um,
Well, he was a
to John
dick,
Adams,
but I mean.
yeah, he wasn't crazy. He was just a prick. To John Adams was something to the effect of, I hope very badly that the people do not revolt for want of a king." Something like that. I can't remember the exact wording, but
Mm,
basically he was
yeah,
saying he knows that the people want a king. The
yeah,
people want to be they want that
lead.
pageantry. Now
They
what we
like
did in
it. Yeah,
America, the way we got around that for so long is we made the founders into gods, basically. We deified them, built
we
giant
did.
statues and
We did.
obelisks and shit to them.
That was the
That's how
intent.
we got around it.
No, that
Yep.
was the intent. Yeah, that was the intent. Try to stave that off. But to be fair, though, a monarchical system has its problems. But if you have a good monarch, it's actually the best system.
Yes.
It is.
Philosopher king.
If you have a really good king, it's the best situation to be in. The problem is
I
they
say it
have
all the time,
children.
Chester.
Yeah,
The best leader of all time is probably Caesar Augustus. I don't even really think anyone can compete.
yeah.
And he
Octavian
was
was pretty
he was
badass. Yeah,
he was a dictator, right? Like he
yeah.
was the emperor of Rome and everything. But
Well,
he was a philosopher.
I think he was
He
an
was a
autist,
philosopher king.
is what I really think he was.
Well, that
Um,
helps.
yeah,
But he was one of these philosophers. Obviously, one of the other really great Roman emperors specifically is Marcus Aurelius, and
yep.
he was definitely a philosopher. He wrote all kinds of books about it. So
Hadrian as well.
Hadrian was pretty good. But the philosopher king, Charlemagne, also a philosopher. Like he was really big, he was very important to him. But the philosopher king is absolutely the best way to have a government. The
It
problem
is.
is you can't guarantee a
The
philosopher
children.
king.
It's the children.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem. And therefore, overall, a true free market republic is the safest
It's
bet.
safe. Yeah, it's safer. It's not better, but it
It's
is safer.
safer. Yeah, democracy is shit. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
fuck
said it.
democracy.
Yeah, you don't want that. But a free market republic, a constitutional republic like America has, is the safest bet. Anyway, let's get into today. That was a nice little fun warm up. But I want to start out today. We're going to talk about wrestling, but I want to start with I just had Golden Week here, and of course my family was back, and it was nice. We did stuff with the grandparents and all the kind of things you do during a family gathering. So here in Japan, you don't get vacation time with your job. It's just the vacation moments in Japan. Everyone has the same time, which is good and bad, right? But nevertheless, one of the things
Oh,
the
I can't
Golden
even
Week.
imagine the traffic and shit. Like
Oh,
in
dude,
in
it's
in
insane. It's insane. It
oh
is. Yeah, no, I stay away from it. I usually will, if I am going to travel, I will, because I control my own destiny, right?
yeah
So I will, shut everything down or put something in place where a day before I'll move, right?
yeah.
But coming back, I have to deal with the traffic. But whatever. I didn't do that this time. I stayed here. But of course, one of the things that Golden Week in Japan, which basically was three holidays that is kind of glued together back in I think it was the 80s, where called it Golden Week because they wanted to promote movie ticket sales in Japan. I know it sounds weird, but it's Japanese, right?
hmm
So it is traditionally a time to go watch movies. So I didn't go to the cinema, but we did watch movies, and I saw four movies. That's a lot for me, right? To be able to see in a 1 week period. But I did watch four movies, and I wanted to talk about them a little bit before we get into the wrestling. The first one I want to talk about here is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst
Ooh,
Thieves. Have you seen it yet?
what'd you think? I have not. What'd you think?
Yeah, I loved it.
Good.
I
That's what I keep
absolutely
hearing.
loved it.
I keep hearing they did the thing again. They did the retarded,
They did.
backwards,
Idiots.
elitist, racist, sexist fucking marketing
Yeah,
campaign, right? That's what it was. Let's not pretend that's all it was. It was a
it
marketing
was.
campaign, and the movie was from what I hear, I haven't seen it, but from what I hear, you're the third person that always told me it's nothing like that. There's
Nope,
nothing like that at all.
nope,
It's
nope.
just a fun action movie.
It is, and it's really unfortunate they did that because this movie lost money, and therefore we
Yep.
probably won't see another one. And it's unfortunate because Chris Pine was excellent as the Bard. He's a Harper Bard, right?
Mhm.
And it did have a couple little dumb things, like for instance, you can't have a white man with a white woman, can't have it, right?
Yeah, not
So
allowed.
of course he
No.
had a mulatto wife, all right, dumbass, but that it wasn't made a point though. It didn't. There was never nothing ever was ever mentioned. There was no
Yep.
girl power moment. You had the I can't you can't see her on the in this picture, but you had that Rodriguez lady who always plays the tough Latin lady, every movie she
Mhm.
does. But she was good at it though, and she had a great character arc. You can't see this half elf over here, and once again, it's not a black elf. He's a half elf. So
Mm.
they even did that right because there are no black elves, right? But a
That's
black
true.
half elf, oh sure, you can have that. So they
Yeah, whatever.
even kind of couched that properly. He had a great character arc. The little you can't see her very well, but the cute little tiefling here, she didn't have much of an arc, but she was okay. She was cute, and her owl bear form, she's a druid, was cool. Of course, Hugh Grant, who knew he was the best bad guy ever. This is the second movie I've seen him as bad guy. He was in the
Look at
Guy
his
Ritchie movie
nose.
recently. Huh?
That nose should have gave it away
It
for
should
Hugh
have.
Grant.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
got that bad guy nose all day. Like
Yeah,
there's
he
something
does.
about that face structure that looks like I don't know if it's Hollywood's indoctrinated me into thinking that, but you notice all the best bad guys have this a very similar nose.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. But I mean, because he did a great job. The paladin here, the black guy, once again, he had his own little arc. It didn't matter because this is Faerun, this is Forgotten Realms, Ed Greenwood, right? The
Mhm.
race doesn't matter in that regard, right? It
Yep.
doesn't mean anything. The red wizard, the Thayan lady up here, we had a little cameo from Zaz Tam, nice. But it was pretty solid, fun little action movie from beginning to end. Had no nonsense in it, other than like I said, he can't have a white wife, right? And
Yep.
his little daughter, that she played very minor part in the movie. However, the one thing I loved about it the most was this. This was a nerd fest, dude. I don't
That's good.
know who I doubt it was the director or the people at the high end, but the back end people, they put you ca- I if I was actually going to point out every reference in this, I would have to watch the movie again because I wouldn't stop talking. Dude, the
That's
amount
good.
of name drops, D&D references. This is the first D&D movie ever made, right here. First one.
Mm.
It's just so full of Easter eggs. It is a nerd fest. It's great fun. Yeah, I recommend it. If you're a D&D person, you have to watch this movie.
Well, that's good. I'm glad it was good.
Yeah.
I do like the see Chester Hollywood's reading my mind because my thing I'm writing has a well black. He looks very similar to this guy actually, and he's a paladin as well.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you sons of bit, you reading my mind, Hollywood. Get out of there.
Well,
That's my character. Can't have him.
and he was perfectly paladin, even comedically so. And of course, if
Mhm.
you know the origin of the word paladin, it would make more sense that it would look like a Middle Eastern or a black
Correct.
person like this anyway.
That just Chester. That's why mine's that color.
Oh yeah, yeah, because it's accurate. Yeah, but
I did, Chester. I did the thing you said to do. Research.
yeah, research. Yeah, do that. Yeah. But it was great fun. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. My family enjoyed it as well. And it's a real shame that these idiots couldn't shut their damn mouth and just let it be, because
Yeah.
this movie it bombed. And
And
I
it's a
there,
shame for
yeah,
Chris Pine too, because I like Chris Pine, but he
he's
just
good in
keeps
this role.
somehow ends up in bombs.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't get it.
unfortunate. Yeah, because he's great in it. He really was. And the acting all around, there wasn't anything. There wasn't any dropping of the ball with the acting. It was all good. It was solid,
That's
dude.
good.
Solid movie.
Good to
It
hear.
just
Good to hear.
references everywhere. References. If you're a D&D, a deep D&D nerd like me, I mean, it's just the I don't know who it was, and I seriously doubt it was the director. I really feel it was the dudes behind the scenes who are doing all the set design and all the just the script writing stuff. They kind of had their little secret meetings. I really think they did. And
Yeah.
I guarantee you the director and producers had no clue of all the references in that movie. I think it was a little bit of subterfuge or going on here. I feel so,
Mm.
but it was great. So yeah, go check it out, dude. Good movie. Good movie.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's only at 200 million with a $150 million budget, so it's lost a lot of money.
Yeah, no, it's already 50 million in in the hole. And it's more because you have to add advertising on top of that.
Yep.
Anyway, you go check it out though, because in my opinion, this is the only actual D&D movie ever made.
Well, I think the problem this movie has is they put it out at the exact wrong time. Not
Maybe.
only was the marketing just stupid and backwards, they put it out where there was just so much to deal with. I mean, that they should have probably waited to put it out in late fall, and I bet it would have done better.
Hmm,
Uh,
maybe.
but decision's been made now, so there's no flipping the thing now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, think about it. You had Mario, you had John Wick, coming out right in a similar time. This came out March
Yeah.
31st.
Yeah.
Uh, so there was a lot of movies people were waiting for, big movies that people were waiting for that were coming out very very soon. So a movie like this that people I remember us talking about it. D&D fans weren't really super excited about because we were like, they were all like every one of them I talked to said, of course it's about a bard or whatever or a rogue or whatever, or thieves or whatever. That's that preconception probably put a lot of people off from seeing it. And most of the people I know besides you that've seen it just kind of did, right? They were just like, why not? I'm here, or whatever, or I'll go watch it on a cheap day or something like that.
Right.
It wasn't so much of a, I want to go see this, and we're there opening night. That wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
And I think the reason is because of that. Is because they it wasn't like a super original premise, right? They
Well,
didn't
it's not.
try anything new. It's
No.
just the same old thieving D&D storyline,
It is. It
which
is
I
that.
think honestly what would have worked better for them is if they would have made a movie about a paladin with the central character
Yep.
of a paladin.
And you
I think
could. He'd
that
be interesting. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
that would probably make more money, and especially if they used a black paladin, they got all they can get all the black points for it.
Hmm.
Uh, I just think it would make a lot of money if you told a really good story, and he has to have, it can't be, some nonsense pseudo paladin. He needs to have faith. It needs to be prominent.
Yep.
His faith needs to be part of his character. All these things, and you can get away with that more with a black character than you can a white character for some reason. If you notice, like a lot of athletes, most of the time, the ones that you hear being very religious nowadays, anyway, are black
Hmm.
or not white. For whatever reason, white athletes or white faith, I guess, is really looked down upon in the media.
It is. Yeah.
And
Strangely. Yeah.
which is strange to me because it's the same, like they're just Christians or whatever, so they're saying the same exact same words, but their skin's different, so it's allowed. It's
Yeah.
so weird.
Well, I grew up in the era of Tom Landry. You better believe
Mhm.
God was on his lips. But yeah, a great movie. And for all of those who, my favorite, cameo slash Easter egg. There's so many, dude. My favorite one is, and praise be to Ed Greenwood. Wink, wink. Thurmagor shows up, dude. Spoiler. Anyway, so let's move on. So I watched that one, loved it. Then I watched. I don't know about you, but I like Slavic, Russian or Czech or Polish, Romanian movies. I like them because
Mm,
they have a certain feel to them. Like if you want to watch a very dour, gray, emotionless detective show, go to Scandinavia, right?
yep.
I mean, but I do like some of the Slavic movies, and the Russian ones have the best production. To be just be fair, so I watched a couple of those. Finally, I watched Sputnik, and dude, that movie's badass. Go watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Russian movie, I'm assuming.
yeah. It's in Russian. I don't know if there's an English translation or not, I watched this by myself. Um,
I'll tell
uh,
you what, man, Hollywood needs to we've been saying this for years, but they really need to get their stuff together because some of these other countries movie industries They're not like they were. They can put
Mm-mm.
out some good, and they're not just like art house good where it's good acting or whatever. No, no, no. Actually good, fun movies.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
No,
coming out all the time from all over the world now.
the Russians are dropping like the 80s, dude, right now.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
I love it.
This
I love it.
movie is killer. Go watch this movie. See if you can find an English version of it. I don't know. Maybe you can. I don't have that issue. But dude, this movie's awesome. It's really good, solid horror movie. So I saw Sputnik. I know no one else has seen it, but I suggest you go see this. Another one that this one you can find English easily, and because Shutter is doing it.
Mm,
And they did in collaboration with it's all Russian actors, right? So this definitely has English, right? So this is not a problem. Super Deep. Have you seen this one?
I have not.
Great little horror movie, dude. Oh, awesome. And it's got less than a 5 rating. Sputnik has at least got like a 6, 7 or somewhere around 7 in the ratings, IMDb. But this one right here is less than a 5, which doesn't make any sense to me. This is solid 6. It's really good little horror movie. Yeah, once
Is it
again,
about being deep under the ocean?
well, it's talking about they were talking about that place in Russia where they dug like 12 kilometers into the earth.
Okay, so it's not underwater. All right, I might watch it then.
They
I have
dug.
whatever it's called where you don't like deep ocean. That's I got that. I'm not into that. I don't like watching movies like that. I'm like, nah, I'm
No,
good.
no,
I'm
this
good.
is underground. But basically, it's the Tolkien's. They dug too deep.
Mm,
They delved
yeah,
too deep. Is that kind of
yeah.
premise? But really, really good, solid little horror movie. I love horror movies. Dave says I saw the first D&D movie on opening weekend. Oh boy, so did I, dude. Talk about throwing shit at the screen. Yeah, it was bad, dude. This movie is nothing like that. It's fun and it's true D&D.
It's so weird. It should be such an easy one to do
Yeah,
because it's
just
so
reference.
huge.
Yeah.
It's so huge. You can do anything. Just about. I mean, just about anything could be made into a D&D movie.
Yep.
And yet somehow, apparently they finally did a good one, but somehow it was just an impossible task. Herculean
Right.
to pull
Well,
it off.
especially with Ed Greenwood's vision. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so easy, dude. This one stayed on the Sword Coast mainly. I would love to see them go into the inner sea area. Go to Suzail or Cormyr. Or the Moon Sea, maybe, or something like that. There's so many places they could go with different feels and tastes. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get it because it bombed. They lost money. They lost a lot of money on that, dude. Anyway, super deep,
Shame.
small budget, awesome movie. Sputnik, freaking awesome, fantastic. And then I've been waiting. I saw this one.
Ah, see, I saw that one too. I watched this one this week too. It was on Amazon. They had it on Amazon. You could rent it or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to hear your take. Let's see what you say.
Okay. Nick Cage. Everyone, please clap, please.
Yeah, old Nicky Poo,
Dude,
Nicholas
he
himself.
looked so much like Bela Lugosi.
Yeah,
It really looked like Bela Lugosi. He did. Oh, Nick was having the time of his life. And here's the thing:
yeah,
when Nick is happy, we are happy.
yes,
Right. So Nick was awesome. This Nick Holt guy, Nicholas Holt, the guy that played Renfield, he's actually
yeah.
pretty good, dude.
He's not a bad
He's
actor.
a solid little
He knows stuff.
actor.
Yeah.
Most people are probably really concerned about Aquafina. And to be fair, the girl can't, it's like her face is frozen. She can't
Yes, she can.
emote at all. I
She
mean,
just does not act.
well, no, she
Not at all.
just, her face is literally as if it were glued or something. I don't know.
Oh, she's
Um,
probably had plastic surgery or something.
Maybe, but she can't move her face. She wasn't annoying, but it's just she doesn't have the skill. The other Asian girl in it, her sister, way better actress. She should have been in
And
that
prettier.
role, well, and
Yeah,
prettier. But I don't know why they keep trying to sell Aquafina as a love interest. She's
I
dumpy,
don't get it.
sloucher. She's I don't
And
well
it's
whatever.
and it's not like she makes up for it with some great acting or
No,
some,
I
like
don't.
some of the other there's been other women that they've had in this role, right? For years. For various different ones that were not pretty by any stretch, but they could act. They could at
Yeah,
least perform.
yeah.
and she's just
She knows somebody.
eh,
Her family. She's connected to something, dude. It's
has to
clear.
be.
It's clear. But whatever.
I would say. Oh, go ahead. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Well, no, but I mean, other than her, which she's not bad. It's just she can't emote at all. But
Hmm.
she's not. She doesn't take you out of it, at least.
No,
But beyond that, oh, I loved it. It was great. It's
it's
not the
pretty
best
good.
movie ever, but who needs it? It's freaking Nicolas Cage's freaking Dracula, dude. Get on board.
I only had two problems with it. One, the main problem, which was the one, of course, I was going to have, is I wanted more Nick Cage as Dracula. I wanted to see that more. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
good. And the other problem is her little side storyline about her dad was completely irrelevant, and
it was.
it that's what took me out of it more than anything. When we suddenly shifted from the two main characters to talk about this random Asian chick who has nothing to do with anything, it's just like, ah, man, it just seems like we're wasting time when we could be having
Yeah.
more awesome Nick Cage's Dracula scenes. What we
To
could
be
be having.
fair, but it wasn't obtuse though.
No, it was just boring. Her whole
Yeah,
storyline bored me. I've seen it a million times, and way better than this one.
yeah.
And it also was kind of strange how there was an Asian woman who apparently had an Asian father with the last name of Quincy, and
Mhm.
I went, huh?
What?
How'd that happen?
Huh?
How'd
Yeah.
that happen?
Yeah, at least they didn't call her Van Helsing. Could have been worse. It could have been worse, dude.
I will
Uh
say that the best thing for it, though, besides Nick Cage being awesome, is Dracula is the bad guy,
oh
and I
yeah. Oh
appreciate
yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
Yeah,
worried
yeah, yeah.
they were going to do some nonsense where he, like, oh, he's actually not that bad. See, he's changed. No, 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 no. He is the Prince of Darkness, and he will remind you of that very quickly at the
Oh
start
yeah.
of this movie,
He is
and I
brutal.
approve.
And no,
Yeah,
and Nick did a wonderful job, of course. The problem with this is this movie made so little money, even though it's cheap. It wasn't expensive to make. It's $50 million movie. It only made 23 million. So
yeah,
I mean,
bombed hard.
it bombed hard, and it's really
It's
unfortunate. Why?
I think it's the same
Why?
problem. They're putting out these movies like the market is demanding movies, and we're not. For whatever reason, they keep thinking that the market's going to go back to like 2019 or 2018, right, or whatever. But they forget for some reason that the market was down those years. If you take out the Marvel movies were the only thing that was and the Star Wars movies was the only thing propping it up. Every other movie was down. And
Yeah.
if I remember right, I'd have to check, so don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure 2019 was one of the worst years for the box office outside of Marvel movies
It makes sense
ever.
though.
And so they keep thinking that it's gonna come back, right? Oh, it'll come back and blah blah blah. No, because the MCU's garbage now. Nobody, it's
Right.
just not what it was. And everybody kind of the big thing that everyone worried would happen, at least people like in on the inside and whatever, was that after Endgame, regardless of how good it is, people are just going to lose interest
Mhm.
because you set up this 10-year storyline. You told it, you did a decent enough job. I think you screwed the ending up, but that's subjective. And everybody's like, all right, I'm good. Like, I had my cake.
Yeah.
I don't need more
Well,
cake.
they'll recoup on the back end because they will sell this to a streaming service, I'm sure.
Yep.
And it will recoup its funds and it'll become one of those cult classics. Yeah, clearly, obviously, it's going to become that. And like I said, the Aquafina thing doesn't. It's kind of irrelevant in the movie, to be fair.
Okay.
But I don't know why they keep trying to sell her as a love interest because there's zero chemistry with anyone I've ever seen her with. She's not that.
Oh,
She's the comedic goof character maybe.
yeah.
She's not the love interest. And just like in the last movie I saw her in, Shang-Chi, there was zero chemistry. I thought it was her brother, right? No, seriously. In this movie, I think they were trying to sell some love interest between her and Holt, but that didn't come off across at all. It came across
No.
simply as, people who needed each other at the moment. There was no love at all. It
Yeah.
was more of an understanding. So they keep trying to sell her that way, and that's not who she is. The sad thing is, because I really want a follow up, because
Hmm.
I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but you could clear with this Dracula, you can certainly do a follow up.
Yes.
And so put himself somewhere in the world. where he's trying to do a restart. He's got a hottie. Please give him a hottie.
Yep.
And then old Dracula comes back for a little payback. Let's do an
Yep.
Empire Strikes Back, please. Dracula
Yep.
Strikes Back.
I love it.
Yeah, no, dude. Yeah, it was killer. Go
No,
ahead.
it's what we said was going to happen largely is Nick Cage was going to kill it, and I
Mm-hmm.
think he did. I
Mm-hmm.
thought he was
Oh, he's great.
spectacular. When Nick cares, he is genuinely one of the best actors in the world.
Oh, he
When he
kills it. Yeah,
cares,
he
he
does.
can kill it. But a lot of times he's just there for a paycheck, and it's very obvious. Uh, but
Castles.
when he's not like that, I think he's a very underrated performer. And this movie is a great example. Like you said, he's got the look. He looks just like what everybody pictures Dracula would look like.
Yeah, Honto
He
Bella.
has the
Yeah.
mannerisms down. He's not trying to be funny unironically. So if something he says is funny, it's typically intentional, even if it's very dark or whatever. It's the thing that was impressive to me, like I said, is they didn't try to make him sympathetic in any way. They
Mm-mm.
didn't try to make him in any way the hero. He's
Mm-mm.
not.
No,
Dracula is a monster,
he's
and
not
they
misunderstood.
explained very clearly that he knows he's a monster,
And he
and he's okay with
loves it. He revels in
it.
it. I want nuns. I want a bus full of cheerleaders. You know,
Yes.
uh, right, right. And of course, in one scene, he walks by everything that was requested. Right, Renfield.
Yep.
But let's see here. Edwin says, "Word up. You're showing your age, buddy. He sure enough be cooking in your book." Yeah, no. This was great fun, dude. Nick Cage is very entertaining, fun guy, and the Nick Cage comes out several times in the movie. We get the
Yep.
the veneer of Bela Lugosi's Dracula is dropped, and it's just Nick. Whoo!
Yep.
Literally, there's a whoo scene in it, right?
Yep.
Thank you very much, sir.
What I would like, if somehow it's not going to, but let's say a miracle happens and it makes a ton of money on the back end, and they greenlight a sequel somehow.
Yeah,
What I would hope they do is they bring in a little bit better scriptwriter whose jokes are a little bit sharper, because a
yeah,
lot of
maybe.
the jokes didn't land. I mean, I snickered at them, but I was hoping this would be a little bit funnier, or they go a little bit harder with it and take some of the humor out.
Yeah, I
But
didn't guffaw either. Yeah, but that's
yeah, there
okay.
was no belly laughs or anything
Well,
like that,
the
and that
fight
that was a shame.
the fight scene in the motel, particularly where the face gets ripped off, that was funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
that
like,
was funny.
"Oh, dang, he
Damn,
ripped his
dude.
face off."
Yeah. But no, it's a great fun movie. Go check it out.
Yep.
I'm very happy. I watched 5 movies actually. You notice I'm only showing 4. The
Uh-oh.
fifth one I watched was called Corrective Measures. It was one of the Bruce Willis ones where they're kind of he's just trying to make money even though the Alzheimer's is setting in hard. It had
Mhm.
the what's his name? The guy who played Yandu. Um,
I can't remember his name, but I
well,
know who
that
you're
guy,
talking about.
Yandu guy, he was the main, and it was fun. It was basically about a supervillain prison breakout, is what the movie's
Mm.
about. But it's super low budget, and it's I'd probably say it's a 4.5. It's somewhat entertaining though. But that one, I wouldn't recommend it.
Of course.
However, these 4. Dude, Renfield, great fun. Nick Cage's Dracula. What more could you ever ask for? I mean, honestly, super
Yep.
deep, great little small budget horror movie. They did such a wonderful job with this dude. They really, really did. And Sputnik, this is just top of the line horror movie right here, right? And then D&D, AAA movie, great fun. So
Yep.
yeah. Did you watch any movies recently you want to talk about?
No, just the Renfield one. That was the only one that was like a new one we'd watched.
Yeah.
Last week, I think I mentioned this, but last week we watched all the Harry Potters in order, just because they were on Peacock,
Yeah,
and
why not?
I got that really cheap deal from Peacock for a year for only $30, so I got it. And so we watched them all. And I really don't I mean, I've never read the books, so maybe if I did, I'd understand why some people actually genuinely hate those films.
I don't
I
know
don't get
why.
it. I think they're fine. I think they're
Yeah.
actually well, especially if you watch them in succession, they do a very good job of keeping a cohesive storyline. Like they don't there's not massive plot holes between two movies or whatever. It's not that I remember anyway that I saw. So that's actually very impressive, especially for a series that long, for
Yeah.
them to keep it that, with very few, obviously they changed actors for Dumbledore because the guy died, but
Mm.
with very few things like that, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, I
And
agree. Yeah.
I know there's obviously a lot of changes from the book or whatever, but um I really liked
The
I
books are
liked the
better.
fact that, of course, I like the fact that even though Harry could have very easily been written in the movies, especially to be just insufferable, he never
Or
does.
or or, or a Christ-like savior. Yeah.
Yeah, he
But
never really comes off that way. He just kind of does things, right? Like
well,
that's more what it is. It's not really he's doing it for. It's not even to him, to the character, at least not at first, especially. He's not trying to be anything. He just
no.
things
He's caught
he
up.
goes to deal with stuff
Yeah,
basically.
he's
Yeah, he
caught
just
up
gets
in it.
caught up in it and he's got to deal
Yeah.
with it.
No, and we have to, because the thing is, whether you like Rollins or not, she's a really good writer and she's a very smart woman. Enough
Yep.
said, right? And but the thing that helped us, I think, was a little bit Freudian on her part, because she
Mm,
has stated very clearly that she wanted Hermione to be the hero.
yep.
But she knew it wouldn't sell, so she went with Harry. So the whole thing in the back of her mind the whole time is Hermione's the hero, but I got to sell Harry, and that worked out in our favor because
Yep.
he's not the savior, he's not the Christ character, he's not, because she didn't want him to be, and that actually works
Right.
out in Harry's favor a lot. I
Yep. He
oddly,
doesn't become pretentious or sanctimonious.
yeah, this is true
Because
irony here, right?
yep.
Yeah, no, it's not sanctimonious at all. So it works. It really is a really good series. Another movie I watched, which my wife fell asleep halfway through it. So this is way back, just like maybe last week after on Monday or something. I don't remember what it was, but I did watch another movie in the beginning. So I guess I did watch 6 movies last week. My wife fell asleep halfway through it, but I rewatched. I don't know why. Jason X.
Mm,
And I every watching that movie, the same thought I had the first time I watched it, and that movie had everything it needed to be epically awesome. I mean,
mhm,
seriously, it's not. It's not epically awesome at all. But the set design, the story idea, everything they had in that movie could have been one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Or else I wouldn't call Jason a horror movie, but you know what I mean. I talk about Jason Voorhees, right? Friday the 13th.
mhm,
Um, but if what I would do if I were, because they're trying to find a way to reboot Jason and all these other things, right? What I would do is I'd go back, I'd make a movie that is a prequel to Jason X and take it serious. Don't be jokey and throw a bunch of TNA in there just because you have to. Don't. You could throw a couple in if you want, but do it in the right way, right? Make a
mhm.
prequel to that, remake that movie for the second one, and then the third one with Jason Newirth. I'm telling you, dude, if you did it right, and they had good set design on that. The whole concept of Jason finally being captured, right, and them trying to find a
Mhm.
way to kill this evil and failing at it, and then an accident happening, and 400 years pass by, and some scavengers find him, and he ends up in space. Yes, I know, Jason in space. Yes, I know, but the concept is freaking awesome, dude. That is a
Yeah.
great, if you took that serious, if you gave that to Rob Zombie and let him do
Mm,
what I just said, a trilogy, just like I had said, Rob would knock that out the park, dude. It would be good.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I always thought it was a decent premise. They just really screwed it up.
they did. I mean, because that was a
Botched it.
great idea, dude. Even my wife agreed that was a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Well, a lot of times when they do the in space thing, I know it's a meme. It's just the reason why we're in space is stupid, right? In
Yeah.
this one, it was a very clever idea, And like I said, I'd like to see the prequel because the capturing of Jason Voorhees, and then the trying to understand what this supernatural thing is. What is this? That would be cool, dude. That would be interesting, right? It's completely outside the model. of Friday the 13th, but that's okay. You should if you want to keep it alive, reinvent it, right? Be like Madonna.
Be like Madonna.
Okay,
Chester's sage advice.
I'm just saying that lady, she may be a bitch, but that lady knows how to keep her career alive. Tell you what, Indiana Jones preview is underwhelming. The capitalism line and the fourth wave feminist Helena seems flat. Yeah, no, it looks horrible. It does look horrible, and they're having lots of trouble with it. But there's just a lot of that nonsense. Anyway, let's move on to wrestling. You ready?
Let's
I'm
do it.
ready. So first thing I want to do is talk about the history of wrestling just a little bit. And I found this little article here. I'm not going to read it or anything like that because there were others, but this one had some pictures, so I'll talk over it. But the history of wrestling is quite interesting. Now we know this is some old little wrestling shot here, and they have this little thing here from Egypt, of course, with the wrestling. But wrestling has been around forever. It
Mm,
is one of the early human sports that we know about. Wrestling has become culturally significant and important to many, many peoples throughout history. It's just I don't know what it is about wrestling over, say, just boxing or something else, but maybe because it's a non-lethal form of fighting, potentially non-lethal, right? Maybe it's
mm.
that simple. It's a non-lethal form of combat to prove strength or superiority or what have you. You can get into the philosophical reasons why every culture on earth has wrestling in one form or another throughout history, but they do. And of course, the ancient Egyptians are no different. We have wrestling is still prominent in many cultures today. A lot of cultures around the world, of course, practice Greco-Roman wrestling in high school and junior high, and go on to Olympic Games. It's still here, right? A lot of countries do that. Judo is a kind of Japanese version of it. That's quite popular. Certain Russians like it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, of course, you still have the more traditional stuff going on, like say Mongolia. They still and Turkey. They still do the oil wrestling, but they literally. I
The
know
old
it
oil wrestling.
sounds sexy, but it's not. It's hairy men with giant guts who have oil poured all over them. I'm just telling you, it ain't
I
sexy. It
love it.
ain't what you imagine, right? But of course the Japanese have it with their sumo, right? And that's an actual religious ceremony that is going on with that. So wrestling has been around a really long time in various forms, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about entertainment. So
Yep.
where did it start? And I will just ask you, Thundero, where do you think modern wrestling, pro wrestling comes from?
The show wrestling,
Yeah,
the
the
what we
pro
call pro
wrestling,
wrestling.
professional wrestling. Yeah, yeah.
The carnival.
Yep, the circus.
Yeah,
That's right.
it's carny shit.
Carny shit.
Um, yeah, no, it started because originally, when it very first started to get somewhat popular, it was basically real. It was mostly a shoot. But what happened was, is the matches took a very long time, some of
They
them
did.
hours,
Yeah.
to get a pin because these guys were in insane shape, and the only way to win was to pin the guy, and the other guy just wouldn't let that happen. Uh, so promoters couldn't get people to come watch that for hours. So they came up with this brilliant idea. I don't know who, it may have said on who was the first one to come up with the brilliant idea of fixing the fights so they
Hmm.
would be shorter and they would be able to, sell them. People would come watch them because they're shorter. And then over time it evolved into much more theatrical, and some would say, me included, that now it's too theatrical. It's silliness a lot of the times. Uh, but that it originally started as a sideshow attraction, effectively. You would watch
Hmm.
these men struggle with each other in these, usually in the silly little outfits that we now call pro wrestlers wear. Uh, and it grew over time. I'm trying to remember what year it was. I think it was in the 20s or 30s, where some drunk DJ accidentally released the information of the winners before the event happened
Right.
because predetermined,
Right.
and he was drunk one night and he started telling it, he read the wrong card or whatever. And everybody kind of went, "What? like that's how it came out that it was a show. It was an exhibition, as Hulk Hogan always calls it. It's an exhibition. Uh,
It is.
that it wasn't real.
Right.
That's just funny to me that it was a drunk guy, a drunk DJ back in the way back in the day, 100 years ago, accidentally let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, no, and of course, this is giving credit to a French circus for the inception of modern wrestling, as we know it, right? In the 1860s. But actually, I know that in the 17th century,
Yep.
there was it's kind of like a circus troupe in a way, in the Ottoman Empire, and it would go around to all the different military fort camps throughout the empire. And they would travel throughout the year and go to those places, and they would perform for the troops, kind of like our what do we call it? Bob Hope.
USO.
USO, yeah, it's very similar
Yep.
to that. Very similar to that, right? And they did all kind of things, but part of that was, mock wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Type of thing. But they didn't have storylines and stuff. It was more just to show off the maneuvers and things like that. Because in real wrestling, it's hard to pull off, like, say, a Jap Wizard or something like that. Am I allowed to say
Right.
that anymore?
Probably
It's
not.
a
But
real
even just a
move.
suplex,
Suplex.
is
It's hard to
extremely
pull it
difficult.
off.
Yeah.
So the people want to see the big maneuvers, and they were displaying it. But the idea of storylines, stories, is actually
Yes.
going back to the middle of the 19th century. Interesting, right? You might not have
Mhm.
thought it was that old, but it is. And the circuses would do it. They'd have, and they were much shorter stories because they would tell it over the course of a night, or over the course of a weekend, because they'd move and
Right.
stay in your place for like a week or so. And during that course, you come and you could see this the evolving storyline that they had. So much tighter and shorter type of things. However, it caught on in America big time, even though they giving credit to France. In America, it caught on really big. And I talk about catch wrestling, which is a little, it's not quite the same thing, guys. But America had once again, the Europeans had it too, but the Americans had a lot of circuses traveling around the country at that time, lots of them. I know we think about Barnum and Bailey, which were two separate circuses that melded together.
Yep.
But there were hundreds of little circus troops moving around America in the 19th century into the early 20th century. And it
Yep.
was a very popular thing. Go watch Little House on the Prairie.
Yep.
They even
Yep.
mention it.
Well, it was. I mean, it was one of the only entertainment a lot of places had, right?
Sure,
Because they just didn't. It's not like obviously nothing like now where there's endless entertainment. The
that's true.
entertainment, actual, orchestrated entertainment was very few and far between for most people, especially in America. Maybe not so much in Europe, but especially in America because
Hmm.
America was
Hmm.
so wild. So much of it was just, and even today,
The rule,
people
yeah,
people really misunderstand what America is. People think of America mostly. People think of the cities or the areas around the cities. No, there is vast swaths of this country.
mm.
There's no people. There's nothing but some trees and some
Beautiful
mountains and some
nature,
roads.
nature.
Just some nature out there.
Hmm.
And that's all there is.
Yeah.
Vast swaths of this
Yeah.
country that are still wild and untamed.
Well, during the 19th century, it became more and more popular, and more circuses added in these little wrestling stories, right? And it just became very, very popular. Like I said, catch wrestling and some of the other things like that were popular. Also, the bare knuckle boxing and stuff was going on as well. Some of the circuses would promote those kind of matches too, right? Actual bare knuckle boxing matches, right? Pugilist matches. But what happened is around the 20s and 30s, and now in the 20th century, it had built up to such a point, but you got to remember, we're in a Puritan moment right now. I know it seems weird because the Puritanism is so whacked and out of and non-Christian, but it is Puritan. Understand these progressives, which is in itself an irony. They are Puritans. That's what they are. And we're under that same feel here in the 20s. And 100 years ago, in those 20s, we had the same thing because what was going on? The 20s was the Roaring 20s was aptly named because all over the Western world, people were having good time. Women are out being very, very, amorous, let's say, drinking, dancing, and it was quite extreme, fun time. But of course, anytime you have too much fun, there's someone going to come up and try to mess with your fun. Karens are historical.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, we had the suffragette movement, the prohibitions movement. And a lot of people think it was only about alcohol. No, it was not. It was about a lot of things. And wrestling got caught up in it because they
Yes.
considered it to be degenerate, right? In London, for instance, where it was the most popular spot in Britain to watch and see, because by that time in London they actually had permanent type of circuses that never closed or traveled, right? But they actually in London proper they made it illegal, right? You couldn't wrestle at all
Hmm.
for quite a while, and it fell into the countrysides, and it survived luckily. But in America, they tried to do the same, and they had less success, but some. However, after that whole era of nonsense, the 30s, and of course the into the heavy war of the 40s. After that, we had several things happen. One, TV. This is the
Yeah.
big hit. This is the big change, the TV. Now, in America in the 50s, it was not strange for the majority of houses to have a TV. It wasn't. It wasn't like the radio. The radio was far more, there everyone had a radio. I don't know that even today we have saturation equal to the what the radio was, right? But the TVs in the 50s in America was a very common thing to own. Everyone kind of had one, or at least one was near you. That was important. Other places in the world, you didn't necessarily have as such a saturation of TVs. Here in Japan, for instance, where wrestling caught on after the war as well, and it's still going strong, very strong. It Here, like in this village that I live in, her parents are her dad, particularly not her mom, but her father is coming from kind of aristocracy background, right? And they have and keep in mind the Japanese aristocracy is very, very near. It's not far like it is for Americans, right?
Mm.
And her father, therefore, as a little boy, he was very rich, and they had a TV in the front room, and people in the neighborhood didn't, but they'd all come and watch certain TV shows in her father's house. So that's how it worked here in Japan. There wasn't every house had a TV, but people would gather in a center place to watch, the Monday night show or whatever it was. And that was true around the world. But in the 50s is when things really kicked off with the wrestling. And of course, it led into the 60s, which was a big, big, big history wrestling time. In America, a lot of famous names come out of the 60s, dude. A lot. And then, of course, into what we would call that we call that the golden age, I guess. But coming into the real golden age of the 80s and the early 90s,
Oh yeah.
right? And then of course on till today. But how it came up out of the circuses and how it became really popular. And I don't think you have wrestling today without TV, though. I think TV is the real reason why it exists the way it does.
It
And
does
they,
help.
though they took a huge advantage of the medium. They really, really did,
Yeah.
because it's a great place to tell stories just like the soap opera people had such success and they're still going too, right?
Well, the best thing about like the old days, well, I guess technically the middle days, the 30s to the 50s or so. In the 30s, especially, it wasn't as easy to travel around America as it is today. We didn't have the interstates, at least not in the system like we do now. A lot of the roads were, if they were paved, it was very shoddily done, or most of them were gravel or dirt. So even if you were, say you went to, I don't know, Louisville or whatever, the people from the countryside, they could come there, but it was quite a jaunt compared to what it is today. Uh, but even then, in the 30s, I think the highest drawing event in the history of the country, besides like NASCAR, because they can get crazy amounts of people, was
Oh
a
yeah.
wrestling event for a very, very long time. It had like
Oh yeah.
130,000 live viewers.
Huge.
Uh, that's insane. That's an insane amount of people for pro wrestling. Like the most WWE's ever drawn, to my knowledge, is a allegedly 93,000. Or no, wait, they recently did one where they allegedly did 110. I don't buy that number personally. I think that's they've been doing some massaging,
Oh,
but
Vince, no, never.
regardless, regardless, my point is there was a time, even when it was very hard to travel, where people would come from miles around to
Oh yeah.
watch people wrestle
Oh yeah.
wrestle.
Oh yeah.
And that's a very interesting thing. So what happened was when the TV came out, it took away a lot of that. People didn't have to do that anymore. You didn't have to
Mhm.
drive 3 hours over crappy roads to watch your favorite match or watch the world title or whatever. You could do it just on TV.
Mhm.
And in the 50s and the 60s, wrestling was massive on TV.
Mhm.
Massive.
It
It wasn't until there was a big downturn in the 70s or so that Vince McMahon was able to even he would if Vince McMahon would have came around even in the 50s and tried the stuff he was doing, it would have never worked because they were making too much money. They would have never
yeah.
they would have been no, no way, not happening. Uh, but because it was a downturn, he was able to pounce, and that's really the only reason it happened. And then once cable came, it gave wrestling a brand new life.
I did.
Um, WCW, I believe, was on cable before WWF was, but then obviously eventually
Yeah.
Vince caught on,
Oh,
and
I was when
as
I
he
was a kid,
does.
I was a WCW kid. I wasn't a
Yeah,
WWF kid. I watched it too, but I really liked WCW.
yeah.
But yeah, they were, and of course they're an older organization anyway, right?
Yes.
But yeah, no, the 50s, the 60s, 70s, and then it erupted into the 80s, 90s, and what we have now. It is a very interesting thing, and Vince McMahon is one of the most prominent names in the history of wrestling. He just is. It is, you know.
Yes.
But it is a thing I was mentioning in Edwin is hollering, holla, harla tree, harla tree. But it is interesting the juxtaposition of the 1930s and the 1920s and the 2020s. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting mirror, right? It's kind of the Puritanism is the opposite, but it's still the same situation. But let me give you an example. All right, a famous little example that the suffragettes latched onto and made a big noise about back in the 1928, 29, something like that. But let me give you an example compared to today. Going around the news right now on the YouTube. We've seen a lot of it, but here's a very extreme example. There's a girl who lives somewhere near Las Vegas. She and her girlfriends went out to Las Vegas and had a party over her birthday. She's like 4 weeks away from graduation from university, and she went to have a party on her birthday. And of course, that's nothing wrong with that. But she decided to drive herself. She drove home. She hit and killed two people on the side of the road, dead, right? Drunk off her ass. The cops, of course, come get her. And you guys have all probably seen this, where the girl is just completely, even after where she's in the hospital room and the drunkenness has gone away, at least to a point. She's completely oblivious. She doesn't care that she killed two people. Who cares about that? Well, when will I be able to go back to school?
Yeah.
Completely oblivious to the fact that she just murdered two people, does not care at all. Now, this is not the only example. We've seen many of these heartless, careless, just ruthless people running around. They have no ruth whatsoever, zero ruth,
Evil.
evil. But let me give you an example from the 20s in Philadelphia. There was and I do believe there just happened to be a cameraman next to, which is interesting. You could probably some people who question conspiracy theory, I guess. There was an incident that happened where there were a bunch of flappers who were walking, doing, I forget what they were doing. I barely remember the story, but there were a bunch of flappers, which are just dancing girls who like party girls of the 20s. It's a party girl, right? And they were walking along, and there was an accident in the street where a man got hit and run over by a car, and he's dying, broken, just twisted up in the street, dead. Well, he's dying actually. And of course, all the normal people ran over to see if they could help, and all these flappers are just think it's the funniest thing in the world that this guy just got murdered. Well, not murdered, but killed by in a car accident. They're laughing about it, and that was, I'm sure you guys don't have never heard of it because it was so long ago, but it was a big deal. The prohibitionists really kind of were like, "This is what alcohol does to our youth," and yada 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 yada.
Hmm.
But I mean, isn't it interesting the symmetry between the 100 years ago and today, because we have plenty of kids these days that would do the same thing, sit and laugh, like that boy
Oh, they do it all
who
the time.
they do who was doing a selfie with a guy who just got beaten to death. I was going to be stabbed to death by some over stupid shit, but he thought it was funny and he took a selfie. I mean, something this it's not new, but something has happened to our youth to the point that they have become without
Evil.
they've just become, yeah, it is evil, but they have no appreciation for life whatsoever. It's an oblivious state,
Yes.
and it's really really bad. And I'm just saying that those things are not new. And wrestling was hit hard by that back in. You have to understand, back in the 30s, around the whole prohibition time, all across the wrestling world, they were hit really hard because those
Yep.
suffragettes, they hated wrestling. I don't know why. I haven't seen any reason specifically why, but they just
It's
really
too
didn't like it.
violent. It's too
Maybe
violent.
they hated it
That's the
though.
same nonsense they say nowadays when people, because WWE has in the last 15 years or whatever it's been. I guess it's been almost 20 now. They've really tried to tone down the violence of their shows, and fair enough, they did get a little bit ridiculous at times. But
Yeah, yeah,
it's supposed to be violent, at least especially when it should be. There's certain times, like a normal match on TV or whatever, probably shouldn't be too over the top. But when it's supposed to be a blood feud, right?
hmm,
Personal.
yeah,
They're called blood feuds for a reason. You're supposed to bleed a bit
yeah,
for it.
yeah, yeah.
And when they don't even do that, it just really, and that's the main reason, is because they're trying to please the modern day version of suffragettes, which are just all these advertisers.
Right.
They're trying to, and the people who run their departments, they're trying to please them, so they tone it way down. They don't want to
Mhm.
make it a blood sport, as Vince McMahon called it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny because just last night they had a pay per view or whatever they call them now, a live event, and Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes were the main event. And Brock, he doesn't give a shit about anything but Brock Lesnar, and it's very apparent that Brock Lesnar cares only about Brock Lesnar.
Sure.
So when he decides he wants to bleed in a match, he just does it the hard way. He just bangs his head off the steel post or bangs his head off the turnbuckle or off of a steps or whatever and just cuts himself open the real way because he doesn't care. And so that's what he did last night. So him and Cody Rhodes had a match. Somehow the turnbuckle got uncovered, as it always seems to do, and Brock took it head first, basically headbutted the thing and split his head open.
Yeah.
Uh, my point is the reason why they don't have that stuff, even today, the same exact forces, they don't have that stuff is because the advertisers wouldn't like it.
Right. Oh, I don't
It's the
mind
same. It's
wrestling
the
being
same thing.
kid friendly though. Yeah, it is the same thing. I don't mind wrestling being
I
kid
don't
friendly
think
at all.
there's
I think it's
anything
fine.
wrong with kids seeing blood.
Nah,
I
but
just don't.
probably not. No, that's true.
It depends on the context, of course, but this is the right context. This is supposed to be a competitive sport, right?
Hmm.
Fictionally.
Hmm.
And that's where we should see it.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you don't necessarily want them seeing it in a grotesque way or whatever, but there's I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I actually think one of the things Japan does very, very well, from my experience anyway, with their media that we get over here, is it doesn't coddle as much. It's far more, like because most anime, I know spoilers, people, most anime is not designed for adults. It's designed, at least the ones made based off of like Shonen Jump. That stuff's not supposed to really be designed for adults. I mean, adults obviously read it and like it or whatever, but it's targeted at a teenage audience. Hence all
Sure.
the silliness with the boobs and stuff.
Right. No,
Uh,
the Japanese don't coddle their youth.
yeah, And I think that's a good thing. We didn't used to do it either here. Back in the day, Chester, I think you're just barely too young for this. But back in the day, a lot of schools they would encourage the kids to bring guns, and they would teach them how to use them, teach them how to clean
Oh
them.
no,
They had shooting
no,
clubs, all these things.
no. I lived during that era. We had
Yeah,
ROTC. We had, of course, I was a Boy Scout, and they taught us how to use guns and knives and all kinds of different, survival tools. I was the back end of that. Yeah, for sure.
funny how
Yeah,
you
I
didn't
had
hear about all
boxing and
these
PE.
horrible shootings and things when we embrace the culture and actually show children that these are not toys and these are not to be messed with.
Yeah, yeah.
Just saying,
You know,
there's a reason why you do these things, why you don't hide your kids away from the evil of the world. You let them
right.
see it.
No, that's true. And of course, wrestlers understand pain well. It's just part of the
Yes.
sport itself. So these guys cutting themselves is no big deal. You might be like, "Oh, I don't know if I could do that." But these guys know
It
pain.
doesn't even hurt.
No,
It's a
no, it
razor
doesn't
blade.
hurt.
If
But
you've never cut yourself with a razor, like an actual razor, not like a cheap, janky box cutter, but an actual scalpel grade razor blade, it literally doesn't hurt.
well, tomorrow
Does
it
not hurt.
does.
Well, yeah, the next day it will because your
Hmm.
body's healing, and now it's like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when you
yeah.
do it, especially when you got your blood pumping and you're moving and everything, you don't even feel
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Don't even feel it.
you talked about you shouldn't hide blood from kids. Mostly, I'd agree with that. Although there is this trend with these girls that are going around not wearing napkins, venom
Yeah,
napkins,
that's
and
a little
letting
nasty.
well, no, letting the blood go through and wearing white pants so you can
Yeah,
see it. They intentionally want you to see it. And I'm like,
yeah.
you do realize even the savage Indians put some moss on that shit,
Yes.
right? You're so
Well, because it's just unsanitary to walk around bleeding from orifices all
No,
over the
they
place.
for
What are
some
you
reason they
doing?
think it's empowering. These people are morons. But anyway, that is off topic. However, I did want to mention the females because, of course, here's Gorgeous George, one of the famous NWA wrestlers from back in the day. This guy wasn't even very big, but
No.
he was maybe the first superstar of wrestling, maybe.
You know that guy that show I was talking about that drew 130,000 people.
Yeah.
The champion at the time, the world champion was only 5'8".
Hmm.
He's 5'8". He wasn't a big guy, not by any standard today, but he was fit. He had a night, he was built, not built like Hulk Hogan, but built like a wrestler would look. And yeah, he only 5'8", and he drew 100,000 over 100,000 people to come
Yep.
watch him wrestle.
Yep. We got some giant haystacks, and this is a big boy. Understand, this guy's bigger than Big Show. This is a
Yeah,
big boy. Big Daddy's big, huge dude as well. But giant haystacks is in the top 10 list, the largest person people to ever get into a ring. Gigantic fellow. Once again,
yeah,
the 60s. And of course, the Mexicans picked it up as well. Circus thing, just like everybody else. And they kind of created their own culture of it. The Japanese got involved too, created their own culture. And of course, the British influence, of course, the Commonwealth, there were wrestling circus things happening all over the Commonwealth. Right.
right.
And today we still have South Africans are involved in wrestling, of course. There are Australians, but so it's more worldwide than you would expect. And of course, we're getting into now the late 70s, 80s with the man, Andre the Giant. I told you he walked past me for about 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've told you when I was a real little kid, probably 3, maybe 4, he was still wrestling, and they came into the show here, and he was in the main event, and whoever he was wrestling, threw him because nobody actually throws Andre, threw him into the barricade thing, the little railing that they
Right.
have. In the thing just fell right on top of our whole row. Like everybody was just trying to keep Andre from falling on him. He was. Oh man, the giant moniker was very real
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that man.
It's his thickness, not his height. But
Yes.
we talked about Von Erichs last week, Eric. Of course, I grew up with the claw. The claw was the thing. I was like, "Oh, here it
Oh,
comes! Here it comes!" The Von Erichs are amazing, and it's all. We also talked about the tragedy of the Von Erichs last week. But
yes.
anyway, what I wanted to do when we know everything past that, we talked about that last week some. But the history of it is quite interesting, where it's come from and how it got to us. But what I wanted to do is take a look at some of the old school people. Now these guys are coming coming out of the 50s. And
Mm.
I'm going to look at the 60s as well. But 60s, you're going to see a lot of names that you'll recognize, right? But I'm curious if we'll see anything we recognize in the 50s because this was booming. It was very, very popular. People go watch wrestling
Yep.
in the 50s. It was huge, right? And let's look at here. Now, number one is number one for a reason. Luthez was this sculpted dude. Look at him. He was an
Yeah.
amazing wrestler, champion. He was a huge draw in the 50s, to be sure. But I also want to
And
keep an
legit.
and legit. No, he
Actually
was
hurt you.
legit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Luthez, of course, is a name that I would assume everybody who likes wrestling knows him. But let's
Yeah.
see if we recognize any of the other ones here. Now, these next names I don't remember. I don't know a Sailor Art Thomas. I don't know him. Brute
No.
Bernard. I know the face. He looks
Mm.
familiar to me. But look at
I've heard the name.
I've heard the name. But look at it here. We got Judy Grable, a lady
Yep.
in the
Yep.
50s
Lady Grable. Yep.
wrestling. Interesting,
Yep.
right? Johnny Valentine. Now is this Papa Valentine?
I don't think so. I think it's just Valentine's one of those names that is cool, so people use
Yeah,
it.
but
Uh,
Valentine. He was a legacy wrestler, wasn't he?
I believe so. Yes,
Yeah.
there
So
was a family of Valentines, but I don't think
uh,
so. I don't think that's Greg's
oh,
daddy. It might be. It's possible,
yeah, no,
but
this
I
is I
don't think
can't
so.
check in. I don't know, but I might because he kind of looks like him. This guy Primo, I've definitely heard of him before. El
Yep.
Santo, of course, I definitely know. Buddy Austin, yeah, yeah, I
Yep.
know him. Mark Lewin, I don't know, but he looks familiar, doesn't he? Um,
I've,
he looks familiar, doesn't he? His
he
face.
does. Yes.
I don't know this guy. I don't know this guy. I don't know that guy. I don't know that guy. Oh, he's the bad, evil Russian. That's nice.
Got to have one of them. Yep.
Gotta have one of them. Red Berry, of course, I know who he is. Mildred Burke, another lady. Look at the guns on her.
Oh yeah.
You go, girl. The Sicilians. Interesting. I don't know them.
As they do. Of course, they're involved.
Of course, they're involved. They don't look Sicilian at all. They
No, well,
look
they probably weren't.
Polish.
They're probably
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Dark-skinned Polish
Yeah.
people.
Right. Right. Of course, Haystacks Calhoun, famous. Yeah. I don't know judo here, but that's an interesting reference in the 50s, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see. We got another lady here. Interesting. Hiro Matsuda,
Oh,
Japanese.
got us a
Hercules.
Jap in there, huh?
Yeah, there is. Hercules Cortez. I know him. That's a
Oh yeah.
big SOB right there, dude. You ever seen
Yep.
Hercules Cortez? He's
I've
big,
I've
dude.
never seen him, but I've seen pictures of him.
Well, in the 50s, wrestling is on the TV now, is very prominent, and coming
Yep.
from what we were talking about, going to the local circuses or venues and stuff like that. But Hercules Cortez was also famous as a strong man,
Yes.
and he actually was a very powerful dude, right? Because that was another
Dangerously
thing.
so.
Yeah, no, he was very, very powerful, which is why he was called Hercules. Pepper Gomez, don't know, but love it. I want a Pepper Gomez back. That's the perfect wrestling name, Pepper Gomez.
I
Fred
like it.
Blassie, probably
Classy. Classy Freddie Blassie
classy,
himself.
pretty Blassie. Yeah, but I mean, out of all of these, he's probably the guy who's most well known by younger viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say. But he's only considered number 28, but I think he's actually probably the most well known we've seen so far. I don't know who this guy is, but many people have taken that name. Oh, Ricky Starr doesn't even get a picture. This guy's cross-eyed, perfect. Uh, Riki Dozan, of course, this guy right here is the one who made wrestling famous in Japan. This guy
Yes.
right here, right? Yukon Eric, Billy Robinson. He looks familiar too, doesn't he?
Billy Robinson.
His face.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder. I wonder.
Yeah. I wonder if we got some of his kids or grandchildren or stuff still doing stuff today. He looks familiar, doesn't he? His face does. But
Hmm.
of course, we finally found the man,
The
Gorilla
gorilla
Monsoon.
himself.
Yeah. A lot of people forget he was a wrestler. He was. Yeah.
So so we went past the Sicilian to find a real Sicilian. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Gorilla Monsoon. We got a lady Moolah. Now, once again, Ted
The fabulous
DiBiase,
Moolah.
decades early, and in female
She,
terms.
Fabulous Moolah is the longest reigning champion in the history of anything. 30 years she
Yep.
was women's champion.
Yep. Yep. Bobo Brazil. I know him. I don't know
Mhm.
Whipper Bill Watson though. I don't know him offhand. But
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah. Gorilla, of course, is more famous as a commentator than he is as a wrestler, but he was in the business. He's real. Let's see if I can go to the second page without too much difficulty here. Don Leo Jonathan, Antonio Roca. Yeah, there you go.
There he is.
The fabulous kangaroos. Go away. Go back to Australia. Uh,
There he is, Vern Gagne.
yeah, Vern
Old
Gagne.
Vern
Yeah,
Gagne.
yeah, Vern.
Fritz.
Fritz von Erich. There you go. You happy, Eric? We found
There he
Papa.
is.
There's
That was
Papa.
when he was a
And
Nazi.
you see the claw? You see the claw?
Yep.
Yeah, Nazi claw's
Evil
on there,
Nazi.
baby. He's got him. Okay. Hans Schmidt. Actually, Hans is very, I don't even know. I don't know if he was real German or not. But he was very famous bad guy, Hans Schmidt.
Yes.
Penny Banner, of course. Gorgeous George. Get him.
There he is.
Get him, George. And now it's interesting. This is the 50s, but we're certainly seeing characters that we either they or their legacy is known. Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, really
There
good
he
wrestler.
is.
Yeah. Killer Kowalski, another really good wrestler. Don't know this guy. Bruno San Martino. Yeah,
You don't
that's a
know the
big
Sheik?
name. I don't know this Sheik. I know a Sheik, but
Oh
not
man,
this one.
yeah, he's probably as influential as anybody on here. Mainly just because there were so many copycats of the Sheik.
Oh, fair, fair, fair. Bruno, of course, is a huge name, but of course, it took us a while, but we finally got to one of the biggest degenerates in wrestling history, Abdullah the Butcher.
Yes.
This
They
guy.
will never. Uh, Bruno will have the record for men forever, like because he had that title for so long.
Yeah.
They'll never. That just won't happen again. But yeah, old Abdullah
This guy
himself.
is brutally rough. Very, very rough. People, there's lots of stories from on YouTube of the older guys talking about having to deal with Abdullah.
Hmm.
Abdullah. Let's see here, and Dick the Bruiser. Probably rethink that, Dick. Uh,
Danny
so
Hodge,
Danny Hodge, of course, well known, and
Pat O'Connor, the inventor of the O'Connor roll, which is probably the most dangerous move in wrestling history because it's just a roll up and it wins more matches than anything else.
It does. It does. That's true. But so here we are in the 50s, looking at because this is a bit distant for most of us, here, because in this time my dad is a kid, right?
Right.
My father is a young, he's in elementary school to junior high school in this period, right? Because my dad went to what 64, so yeah, so he's a kid at this time, and I'm sure he watched the wrestling on the TV and grew up with some of these people. But it's that post-war era where wrestling went frickin', you know, cosmic, dude, right?
Hmm.
Because to be fair, uh, I don't know. Do you think they have the numbers today that they had back in this time?
Um.
Viewership,
Well,
right?
it depends. It depends how you break it down. When it comes to actual live viewers, absolutely not. Like the amount of absolute of live viewers that this would have, especially if you did it like per capita per
Mm.
100,000 or whatever, it was just insane. Like
And
even the 80s, Saturday Night's Main Event, there was an episode of that that had like 30 million live viewers. They're not touching that
right,
today. But there's so many different ways to watch things now, and they're everywhere, right? WWE especially, they're in basically every country.
right. Well,
Um,
the NWA, this is back in NWA period, right? And AWA is back in that
yeah,
period, right? This is before we get into where things just went crazy.
yep.
But the NWA particularly, they would catch and rebroadcast to markets all over the world, right? So This is back when we had that freaky weird magic stuff called radio and where they the antennas. You remember those?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But these things would be watched live all over the world. I mean,
Yep.
they really did. So
Yep.
I'm curious. I don't know that they had the same coverage because you mentioned there's so much choice. We're spoiled for it. But
Right.
back in those days, most places in the world had 3 to 5 channels on their
Hmm.
TV sets. Right? Me, I grew up with that. Right? It's 3 channels: NBC, CBS, ABC, and of course you could find PBS and of course UHF stuff. But mainly there were three. Here in Japan, I think there were five. But it depends where you go. It's very few. So, it focuses your attention more. And
Yes.
I bet you back in these days they were like millions of people watching those lives, dude.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's funny because just this year's WrestleMania on in the numbers was the biggest WrestleMania they've ever done as far as like overall gate and all this other stuff. There's a lot of trickery they're doing with those numbers to get there. But if they could pull the numbers that some of these just random shows of wrestling back in the day pulled, I mean, it would be they'd be making billions of dollars a show because it was just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, that was in the 30s that they drew over 130,000 live viewers. Now you go into where radio becomes more prolific throughout the 30s and 40s, and then obviously TV starts to come in, and you don't have to do that travel anymore. You can just watch or listen. Um, I would venture to guess that it was probably at least quadruple in America specifically than it is now. And we know that there was a time where, even in our lifetime, wrestling was watched by way more people on a weekly basis than it is today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be very surprised if somehow modern is even close to the numbers they were pulling.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I wonder why it's fallen so much. And maybe it's just simply there's too many choices. Roger says, "See you next week when for sure the main event of current events awaits." Sorry, guys, to be a glutton for punishment, but it is coming, and man, is it gonna hurt. So stay blessed and love you all. What is he talking about?
I don't know, the end of the world probably. It's
Oh, the
coming.
end of the
It's
world.
all right.
Oh, all right, fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
so
we can do is
only a
just
week
like old
left.
Nero allegedly did
Well, he told AOC to
is
hold his beer. All right.
yeah, is just fiddle. Just fiddle. Fiddle while Rome burns because nobody seems intent on putting out the fire. Uh, but old pro Wrastle Wrastle, I would say probably its zenith in our lifetimes was either the late 80s or mid to late 80s or the late 90s. If you
Yeah,
ask Vince, he has said
mid
it was the
'90s,
late
I say.
90s.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
He,
agree. Yeah.
Vince has said on multiple occasions that he considers Austin to be the greatest of all time, strictly because he was the best draw he'd ever had, which says a lot since he'd had everybody for
True.
like 30 years.
Austin was a huge
Uh,
draw. That's true. Yeah.
oh, crazy draw.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably correct because I don't see any reason why Vince would, lie about that. Um, so when it comes to in the modern era, especially 20, 30 years
You pissed
ago,
off Bob.
was definitely
No, no,
was
I
definitely
just saw that and I'm like, oh, it's time for me to jump in here.
Oh, okay.
was
Yeah.
definitely the peak when it comes to like drawing power. Today, they still draw pretty well. I mean, let's not take that away from them. WWE still does very well when it comes to when they put on a big show,
Right.
people come see it.
They do.
Uh,
But one thing I wanted to add to that I think is very interesting going back into the age we're about to jump into with the 60s here because I'm about to switch
yeah.
over to that. But I think this today and the 60s are very similar because
Mm,
even though we're talking about Impact, AEW, WWE mainly, and some of the Japanese stuff, the
hmm.
reality is there is little teeny wrestling groups all over America, dude. All
Yep.
over. There's got to
Oh
be
yeah.
hundreds of them, right? And it's been a long time since that was true, that there's that many. You can find little wrestling groups traveling around like a circus, today pretty easily, right?
Yeah. There's
So it
2 in my city
yeah, so
alone.
it's interesting that boom is back, even though
Yeah.
the independent viewership of say WWE is certainly down, right?
Yes.
So I find that interesting. Why is that?
Well,
Why is that?
they had their first genuine growth period uh recently. WWE did for the
Yeah.
last, I don't know, year and a half or so, where they actually started to gain audience again for the first time in
Right.
20
Yeah.
years.
When Vince
Um,
left.
yeah, because Vince
Because
Vince
Vince
was
left. Yeah,
scooted
Triple
out.
H was doing a good job. But I
Yeah.
mean, Bob, why do you think that is though? I mean, I think that's a fair point. Why? Because there are tons of these little wrestling groups moving around, like I said, like in the old day, like a troubadour group, right? Moving around.
Yeah.
And people are going to see them. They're supporting it. There's so many of them, but yet
Yep.
the viewership on the TV, which is the easiest way to watch it, is down. Why is that, you think?
Because when it comes to like the people that are going to see these shows, those are the hardcore fans. Okay, the like I don't want to call them common fans, but the casual fans,
Like
they're not
me.
going to go see. They're not going to go see these little shows, unless it's like right next door or something like that. And you're also like they're competing for entertainment, for entertainment attention. So then, and unlike back in the day, there's so much stuff out there competing with them now.
Yeah.
So that's why the TV ratings are down.
So you think it's
And
the
that's like that
uh
across the board. That's like that across the board for everything when it comes to all to like legacy media like television.
It's true. That is true. YouTube's kicking their ass.
Yeah.
That is true. So yeah, so maybe it is simply because you can literally go out a day a week and actually go see live wrestling. Why watch it
Yep.
on TV? Yeah, maybe. I know when I was a kid, I saw plenty of live wrestling and TV wrestling, and
Yep.
there's nothing like seeing it live. That's true.
No.
No, no.
Yeah.
And the reason why there's so many of these little companies that are popping up is because a lot of these guys that made it big started in these little startups, like CZW and MLW, GCW, especially something like GCW, Defy. You know,
Yep.
there's a lot like you look at like the top guys, you look, John Moxley, Brian Danielson,
Hmm.
um, even Roman and Seth. Those guys all started in little companies. Like Moxley started in GCW and eventually went uh, uh, um, to my brain just took a crap.
Well, I'm assuming they all got pulled into
Yeah,
Ohio
yeah.
Valley, right?
Ohio
Well,
Valley and then FCW
yeah,
or
yeah.
FCW.
SCW, Smoky Mountain.
Yep.
All these guys, like all these guys that are at the top of the game right now. They all started in these little companies, and
Sure.
they like going to these little companies. PWG, and it's like so they're bringing that with them, and these people that become fans of theirs, they find out where they started, and then they go check out those shows. So and like Moxley still wrestles for GCW.
No, that's cool.
You know,
That's cool.
it's like and then these guys, and like a lot of these guys, FTR, they like doing these little indie places. And it's caused kind of like this little like you said, it's kind of like a wrestling renaissance where it kind of went back to the territory days. And then you look at and honestly, a big part of it was All In.
All in, yeah.
A big yeah,
Yeah.
the original
Uh,
All In, because that proved that you didn't have to be WWE to sell out a large venue. So you had
all
all these, yeah, you had 5 different companies represented at that show.
well, that all in is coming from Britain, right?
Yeah, no, the second one, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what they call it over there during their TV time. But well, what about Maxwell
This guy.
Friedman?
This guy. Well, well, good old MJF. I like MJF. I like MJF
Yeah.
a
He's
lot. I
great on the
think he's
mic.
got
Yeah,
endless potential. MJF's biggest problem is he's surrounded by nobodies. Now, not that
Yeah.
there's not people in that company who are names. There are, obviously, but
they
he's
don't
already
use
worked
them.
with all of them. Well,
Yeah.
that, and he's already worked with all of them. You can't just do the same program forever. And he just doesn't have people to bounce off of. His best stuff was with CM Punk. And that's
Yep.
because him and CM Punk are very, 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 very similar when it comes to their skill set. They're both really good talkers. And I would say MJF probably at this point is better in the ring, but a young CM Punk could actually go, uh, like MJF can. So I think that's a big. He's kind of. It's funny. I'm going to use Roman Reigns' term. He's on his own little island of relevancy, and he needs help. Like
Yeah,
nobody in all of wrestling history has been a one man show.
Right.
Yes, there have been guys who get to the top and shine brighter than everybody else, but those guys got there by stepping all over other people or being propped up by other people. You have to have somebody there to work with. One of the things
yeah,
that I think is a very accurate description, and I love Triple H as a wrestler back in the day. He was my favorite, actually. But I think looking back is an accurate description. You need a guy like a Triple H who can work at the top level with anybody. And that's what he
yeah.
was. He was
Yeah.
the guy who worked with the draw. He wasn't the draw.
Well, you look at everyone talks about Stone Cold. Stone Cold was not Stone Cold without The Rock, and Triple
And
H was
JR.
not. And
Screaming
yeah.
into the TV.
Well,
set.
yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Is the announcer. They need to have that. We talked
yeah.
about the
It's
announcers
important.
last time.
Yeah, the
You
announcer.
gotta have that guy that knows how to put everybody over. But then again, MJF needs his Rock.
Right here.
He's the Austin. He needs his Rock.
Yep.
And right now they have potential. They have some of them. They have Bryan Danielson who could potentially be that. But they're not doing that right now.
No.
So he needs that. He needs his foil. He needs his ultimate foil. So
Yeah.
But the overall, to answer your question, Chester, yes, obviously the competition in the entertainment market is obscene. It's huge. But I think a lot of the reason why pro wrestling has kind of, at least in like live viewership in America, let's stick to that market because it's the one where it's the biggest. The reason why it has mostly stagnated up until very recently is because WWE sucked. Simple as that. There's
was
no
bad.
other way to describe it other than the product wasn't very good.
Well,
it was either
yes.
way too childish and badly written, or it was, I don't even know what to describe it.
Well,
And you get, because of Vince McMahon's lack of ability to adapt at all and willingness to adapt to anything, you
Yeah,
had a
he's-
just shitty product with this idea that wins and losses don't matter. And it's like, okay, fine, but then why does John Cena win all the time? If wins and losses don't matter, why does one guy always win?
right.
And Vince had like the biggest problem was Vince's ego. Vince
Yes.
has like through history, you can look at this. Vince doesn't like it when somebody gets over on their own. He hates it. He will literally bear if somebody is getting over. That's why when he was going by Daniel Bryan in WWE, that's why it took so long for him to get to the top of the card. Vince didn't like him. And the fact that he was getting over organically by himself, Vince freaking hated it, and he tried to hamstring him
his
at every
whole
turn.
He did.
Career was guys getting over by themselves and him just getting out of the way and letting it happen. Hogan got himself over long before he came into Vince's
Oh
company.
yeah, no, that's true.
Austin got himself over in spite of being the worst heel in the company. He was such a dick, and people still loved him.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we saw the same thing happen here recently with Murdoch and Tucker. The reason as we're finding out, is simply because Tucker was way too famous, and Murdoch
Too
didn't
big.
like the fact that he was starting to talk God stuff. And his girlfriend, wife at the time, was enamored by him, and he kicked her out and kicked him out. Right? It's the same kind of ego, pettiness. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that didn't start with Vince until he started getting this idea that he wanted the brand to be the star. He didn't want to make another superstar like a Moxley, like a Rock or an Austin.
Sounds
Yeah,
like
because
companies.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want the characters to be the star. They want the brand to be the star, and
Or
that
the
Vince.
artist.
Yeah, and that's why
Probably the
Vince.
most lucid thing Jim Cornette ever said on why wrestling's in the state that it's in is and he said, I'm probably going to butcher this, but he basically said it's because it's too corporate now. When wrestling went corporate, it died because now it's only about the brand. It's not about making stars or anything like that. If a guy becomes a star, fantastic, but Vince does not want that. He wants WWE to be king, to be the top.
Yeah,
of
and
the
if
thing.
even if you look at Roman Reigns, he's the top guy. He is 100% the top guy in WWE. He's not on the same level as Austin.
No.
He's not on the same level as Cena.
Well, he's
Yeah.
not on
You
the
know.
same level of a lot of things.
Yeah. He's
But you know,
pretty though.
he is pretty boy. But here, the thing is, we're kind of talking about late '90s, right? Early aughts,
Yeah.
where
Yep.
things really fell down. And but to be fair, things fell down across the board in the late
Yep.
'90s. I don't know what happened. I don't know what was in the water, but
The
everything got
internet.
really weird in the late '90s.
I'm
And we
blaming the
saw
internet.
well, with the comic book stuff was really weird. Movies, it's just everything got
Everything
lame.
became Hollywood.
It became
Everything
lame.
became Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very lame.
And you
And
got to think about Hollywood in that time period. Hollywood in that time period was weird.
yeah, it was just
Yeah.
dumb shit. It was just no one
Yeah.
remembers it because it's not memorable. But anyway, let's look. We're moving along. We're coming into the '60s here. Hey, Thundero, there he is. Uh, uh, you look just like
That's
him, dude.
That's it.
Old
I'm putting my
Briscoe.
picture back to him. That's it. You've done
yeah.
it now.
Yeah, I know. You're definitely Briscoe. But anyway, we're coming into the '60s, and now we're going to recognize a lot of this because these
Yeah.
guys, either they
Yeah.
or their legacy still continues, right? And of course, we have Antonio here, we have Briscoe, and of course, the Bushwhackers. Now, to be fair, the Bushwhackers were funny and fun, but the best tag team is either the Rock and Roll Express or the Road Warriors. You know, honestly,
They got a strong case,
they
both of
do.
them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Both
and
of
it
yeah.
depends how you define best, of course, because obviously, from a business side, probably the Road Warriors. Those
Yeah.
guys were insane draws in the
Mm.
80s.
But from the team that most people have emulated since the Rock and Roll Express. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rock and Roll Express were amazing. Yeah, they were
Yeah.
really good in the ring. They're just all around great, as were the Road
Yeah.
Warriors. And of
Gibson
course,
was so popular. He was so over with the ladies, man.
yeah,
It was
no, yeah.
ridiculous.
Well, and keep in mind, we have copies of both of those, and they were nowhere near as good, right? The Rockers,
Yep.
which did
Yep.
give us HBK, I mean, fair enough, but the
Mm.
Rockers were not the Rock and Roll Express, and the
No.
Demolition were certainly not the Road Warriors, right? But once
No.
No.
again, this is WCW versus WWF, right?
Yes.
And it's interesting that WCW always seems to win that argument, isn't it? What was
Yeah.
It
better?
when they're in direct competition with ideas, often. I wouldn't say always because they tried to copy Undertaker a whole lot and it was always terrible.
It was.
Uh, that was the only time. Honestly, I say this and I genuinely don't think I'm wrong. The only creation of Vince McMahon's, besides the company, I guess, like as far as a wrestler that wasn't horrible, is the Undertaker. He's the only one.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
else did it themselves, or it was basically their own idea, or it was somebody else's idea they copied, or blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and at this
fair.
point, dude, like he's like you. I can't imagine anybody else being in that role than Mark Callis.
No,
No,
no, he
Calloway
really
was the man, and is the man. He's a great
Yeah.
leader.
patience. The man
Yeah.
understood patience. When it takes
Yeah.
you 5 hours and 32 minutes to get to the ring,
Yeah.
you have
And
patience,
the
sir.
crowd
You know,
loves every step of it.
That's right.
you want to know? You want to know the whole thing was? He's like he basically started watching horror movies. He started emulating Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
and absolutely, it
That's
Brilliant.
worked.
like he literally said that's where the walk comes from. He's just like he's just a slow, deliberate walk.
Dude, but it
Builds
works.
tension.
I've seen
Yeah,
it
it's
live, dude. It's
it's
freaking
it's
awesome.
his presence. He mastered that just that showmanship of his presence, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was really good at that. But anyway, get here in the '60s, things start really kicking off as far as coming into the modern cartoon comic book characters, right? You
Yep.
can see it was starting back in the '50s for sure, and before that they had characters and storylines, but we're really starting to get more into the comic book superhero thing now. And rock on, why not? Comic books were kicking ass in the '60s, and so was wrestling.
Yeah.
So, the '70s, there was certainly a downturn, but not now, not at this point. Of course, let's take a look at what we got here. Talk about the Bushwhackers. They're coming out of the '60s. Of course, a lot of people probably know them in the '70s or even early '80s. These guys were still around. They were getting old, though, certainly getting old.
Yeah.
But these guys were fun to watch. They were the goof wrestler, but
Well,
they were not
they didn't.
afraid to throw their body anywhere. Let me tell you.
Well, the thing was, is like it says in there, they didn't start that way. When they were the sheep herders,
All
Dude,
right. Yeah.
they were hardcore, man. It was
They're
blood every
brutal.
night. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, these guys are
Yeah, they are.
not afraid of violence. Just understand
Yeah.
that. But the
yeah,
Bushwhackers, interesting, interesting. Of course, it also gave us the Giant himself. I wish
It
they
yep.
had
did.
chose an older picture of him. But
Yeah.
you know, because in the '60s he's in his prime, so late '50s, '60s, right?
He he was like a lot thinner back in the '60s, man. Like he could freaking move. He could go as a
He
big
could.
dude.
Yeah, he
And
could.
but it's just that as time went on, man, just taking all those bumps, his back, like he had so many back surgeries.
Yeah,
Like he, by the time he got the, and it's amazing too because you think about like the WrestleMania 3, that night between him and Hogan is like iconic.
it is.
He was in so much pain he could barely move.
Yeah, but Hulk did a good job of getting him over, though.
Yeah,
You know, because we give Hulk a lot of crap, especially these days. He gets a lot of crap, but
he loved Andre though.
he did,
He
and
did.
he could work. He could put you over. He could do all those things. He also
Yeah,
was a fairly safe wrestler as well. But
Yep.
I really wish they chose a younger, actual picture from the
a
'60s.
better picture. Yeah,
Yeah,
like one of the black and white, like the one where he's got the like two guys on either side of him with the ropes in his arm.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, that one would have been a cool picture to
yeah.
use.
But of course, keep in mind in the '60s we did start getting color stuff, but
Yep,
mainly it was still black and white, right?
yep.
But Andre, of course, legend, Giant
Giant Baba.
Baba,
Yep.
yeah, in Japan.
The,
In your
Um,
neck of the woods.
yeah,
yep.
no, absolutely, he is very, very famous. I much prefer a Antonio, which I'm sure he'll be later,
And no, yeah,
because
yeah, he'll be.
yeah, he's a much better wrestler. The guy could actually move pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Giant Baba, of course, is still famous in Japan. You know, once again, I don't know how many people outside of you know, who are, unless you're a deep fan, you probably don't know who he is. The Briscoe brothers.
Oh
Now I
my
remember
God.
these guys. Well, NWA, and they were over with. It wasn't WCW. What was the other W1
Um.
Uh, uh
in the
see, was
'70s?
it um
WCCW. That was
WCCW?
No, it was another one.
There was the WWWA. That was the precursor to the WWF, though.
I can't remember. Maybe it
The
wasn't
W, I mean
W,
the
but
WW. Yeah.
maybe it was AWA.
NWA. There was AWA. There was the
AWA.
N.
That's what it
Yeah.
was. They did stuff with that. Of course, NWA was the big one from way back, and that was the big
Mhm.
boy, right? But I think
Yeah.
I saw them on AWA stuff in the '70s as well, the Briscoe brothers. Now, these guys got a bit of a legacy into today, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Don't
Oh yeah.
they?
Yeah. Was it Briscoe was still with WWE up until about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't they have a kid in the game or something?
No, they have people
No,
who have emulated him.
there are people who think that the current the Briscoes from the Briscoe tag team is related to them, but they're not.
Yeah.
Well, these
They
were
just have the same
actual
name.
brothers, just so you know. They're not
Yep.
Yep.
fake. They're not kayfabe brothers. They're real brothers. But they were a big deal back in the '60s. Of course, Antonio. Now it's interesting because
That's a really new picture.
that,
What the
yeah, I
hell?
know. Give us something old. That picture up top would have been better. This one right
Yeah.
here. That's him. That's him in his prime. Or well, he's
I think
actually
he
a
was.
little bit older here. But you know, keep in mind he was such a draw that they actually had a match between him and Hogan, right?
They
Um,
actually okay. There's a great story. Yeah, they did have a match with Hogan, but bigger was his match with Ric Flair and his match with
Yep.
Muhammad Ali,
oh yeah.
which
Where he
happened.
laid on his
And
back
then,
and
yeah,
kicked
yeah.
him in the
Like
legs.
if you guys haven't, Ric Flair was just recently on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's an awesome friggin' stream because he talks about this because this happened in Korea and they first went and the first person they went to when they wanted to put this thing together. Inoki put together this thing in the '70s. It was like it was like a an outreach thing to the world, and like he was trying to like promote sports and stuff like that in the world. Korea bid on it, but the thing is Korea freaking hates Japan and they hate the United States.
Yeah, no,
This is at
they're
the height
assholes.
of this is at the height of North Korea's craziness. So they went to Hogan, and Hogan was like, "No, I'm not going. I can't." He said he couldn't do it, but the real reason he did it because he was afraid to go over there. Then they went to Flair, and Flair was like, "Oh, okay, you know." And him and Inoki and Ali went over there to do this thing, and literally, it was like like he says, it was the most terrifying thing that he's ever done in his life.
Sure.
And when they got back, um, uh, Inoki like literally kissed the ground and said, "Never again."
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they went over there, and it was like this propaganda stuff. Like they had these like in the old days when they were in the stadium, they would have the placards that would like create animations that would go around the arena.
Right.
They did one of a missile being fired from North Korea going over top of Japan and hitting the United States and destroying the United
Right.
States.
Gee.
Well, they were
It's crazy. Yeah.
really trying to push reunification at that
Yeah.
time, and of course, Trump was the next person who bothered. Look at that time frame, right?
Yeah.
Look at the time frame. How many presidents we went through until someone actually tried to make a little peace, or try to unify
Yeah.
a little bit. And the
But
interesting thing with Trump's involvement, which I know some people would just they can't shut up, but it's still going on. North Korea is still like, look at me here, give me money. They're still doing that. But
mm,
their relationship with South Korea is way better than it has ever been, and that's all from Trump's doing, right?
Yep.
yeah.
So but that was part of that kind of, they were trying to get the Koreans back together, type of. There was a lot of little activities like that, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's very 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 famous event. Now this right here with Inoki, um, I've actually seen him here in
Mhm.
Japan about 15 years ago, I guess, or so. But it's very interesting. Him as an old man in Japan, he's still very famous. He still shows up on Japanese TV. It's been a while since I've seen him, but he did for quite a while. And it's very weird. He has this like slap thing he does. Like it's
Yeah.
similar to Flair. Flair does it on the chest, and he does it on the face. But it's funny how many people want to go up and just have Inoki slap him in the face.
Oh, dude, that happens today where they'll go to shows and they'll ask like wrestlers to chop them in the chest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's freaking insane because some of these dudes like that's their thing, and like when they hit you, it's like you start bleeding through your skin.
You got to feel it. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
wasn't he? Wasn't Inoki was like wasn't he uh in the Japan's like their version of the House and the Senate?
Yeah, no, he's a politician for a while. He's a character. He's certainly a
Yeah.
character, and he's a famous Japanese person. But the thing is, you will see celebrities, including wrestling and boxing celebrities, like we were talking about Muto last week, right? He
Mhm.
shows up on Japanese TV all the time. He's not in makeup. He's not introduced as a wrestler. He's not. He's just Muto. And they'll never even mention he's a wrestler, but everyone knows who he is. These guys, it's different. If you have Ric Flair show up on some late night show or something like that, he is introduced as the great wrestler Ric Flair, right? But
Mhm.
they don't do that here in Japan. Everyone knows who Inoki is. Everyone knows who Muto is, and they just show up, and they're on these things, and wrestling is never mentioned. Same thing with boxers. It's interesting.
Yeah, and he is one of the unrecognized WWF heavyweight champions.
Is he? It's
Yeah,
interesting.
Yep.
I know he did a lot of crossover.
yeah, he won. He technically won the championship, but because of like politics and stuff like that, WWE never recognized it. So,
Yeah, well, you
yep,
know how they are. Mr.
yep.
Fuji, this guy was actually on American TV almost always. I remember him from
Mhm.
doing various things, and he definitely took the odd job look with for him from the James Bond movie, but mainly I remember him being with Yokozuna.
He was with actually he was with Demolition for a while,
He did stuff with Sheik
and
as
then he
well.
switched. Yep, switched over to Powers of Pain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um,
and but yeah, and then he was with Yokozuna, and he was it the was it shoot, what was the tag team, the Asian tag team he was with? Um, I can't remember, but yeah, he had a team with them for a while because and very obviously very stereotypical because it was Vince.
Yeah, and he was a real wrestler too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and but he's mainly known as, especially in the West, as a manager.
Yep.
And he was interesting. He a lot of times most of his work wasn't even speaking. It was just his facial experiences, expressions behind when the person was talking. He's an interesting manager because a lot of times managers are put in there because the wrestler can't. Their mic work is horrible, right? So they'll put a manager in to try to fix that problem. Like today, Darby, whatever his name is, desperately needs a manager. Desperately with the AEW. But then again, AEW is a train wreck. Orient Express, thanks, Alan.
Orient
But
Express. That's what it
yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, Fuji is definitely a part of a fixture, right?
Yeah.
Oh, oh my God,
There he is.
freaking Harley Race. Uh, Possibly one of the most underrated people in wrestling history. Actually,
Yep.
He just got to his peak at the wrong time.
he did.
Yeah.
Um, this guy could do everything you needed, right? He was an old school guy. He was rough. He was certainly very rough, but he also could put you over really well. He was a great heel. This guy it was the complete package. He's almost oh, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd put him in DiBiase's category, not Kurt Hennig.
Oh,
But
easily. Yeah.
yeah, but I put him
Yeah.
as he's like a DiBiase level. This guy was really, really good. Now today, mostly all they talk about is him just being very stiff or hard. I don't know if he was stiff. I don't think he was stiff. I think he's just coming from an era where it was just rougher.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I've seen him wrestle many times, and He didn't look stiff to me at all.
It was well. He came up from that era where you had to pay your dues, man.
You
And
did.
and if something happened, in the ring, you handled it in the ring. You gave a receipt, and you're like, here you go. That's it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So
And
and he came up in a harder era.
He did. And for those of you listening, I know we're using wrestling lingo, but stiff simply means a person who is not really good at making the wrestling a show.
Yeah.
They're not they don't have that skill. They're it's like if I got in the ring, I would probably hurt someone because I don't know what I'm doing. That's
It's a
what
little
stiff
more.
means.
It's a little more real than it should be.
Yeah, yeah, and because the wrestlers are, of course, making it look real, but they're also protecting each other, right? And a
Yeah.
stiff guy isn't good at that. What my point is, I know a lot of people today will get on Harley Race for being stiff, but I don't agree with that at all. I've seen the guy wrestle, and I think he's not even close to it. He's just coming from a rougher
Yeah.
era, I think, personally.
And I,
Hmm.
and to be fair, a lot of wrestlers back in the day, they liked working stiff because they wanted it to look more as real as possible.
They did. That's
Yeah.
true.
So
And
they were like, yeah, they were like, yeah, man, lean into it a little bit.
But you understand my hesitance to call it stiff, though, because that
Yeah,
implies unprofessionalism,
yeah, and
right?
well, it also implies amateurism, and he
It
was
does.
definitely anything but an amateur.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing I just said. You just reversed the word.
I know. I'm no, I'm elaborating.
That's fair. That's fair. I like Van Vader. I loved seeing
Yeah,
him, dude. He was so cool, but that guy was pure amateur. He hurt people, right?
you know,
hmm.
Anyway, Harley Race, amazing. Bobby Heenan. Now, how important is that guy?
greatest
Immensely.
manager and one of the greatest announcers of all time.
Dude, his mic work is excellent. Gorilla Monsoon, JR, Bobby Heenan. I mean, dude, I don't know why people get on the mouth from the South, but Cornette was also a really, really good manager and mic worker. But
Oh, one of the
people seem
best.
to hate him today. Why?
He
Uh,
it's that it's kind of ironic too because he's actually a very woke person, but it was woke culture got him in trouble.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. Okay, okay,
And
okay.
it's simple tribalism. He doesn't
Yeah,
like what people call
yeah,
wrestling nowadays. He thinks it's garbage, and he's right. But yeah, it's just simple tribalism. He dares to criticize people's favorite wrestlers. Like he
yeah.
really and the re
He,
in fairness to him, I agree with him on one point with this. He doesn't like Kenny Omega and the elite guys. at all. He has no respect for them. In fact, I'd say he hates them. Very, very clear
Yeah.
about that. But the reason why it has a lot less to do with their, or at least with Kenny Omega, a lot less to do with their ability in the ring, even though he has strong critiques. It is more to do with who they are as people and
Oh,
the
I
things
Yeah.
see.
they've done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So like,
and Cornette, like he just doesn't like what wrestling has evolved into.
yes, he wishes it would go
Um,
back to Harley
he
race.
believes the psychology has been lost, and he's not
Yeah.
wrong. He's not completely wrong on that. Um,
Well,
but you know,
one of the reasons why he dislikes, probably the main reason why he dislikes a guy like Kenny Omega, is because when he was in Japan, he had gimmick matches where he would wrestle a blow up doll,
yeah,
and they
Oh,
had to pretend like they were actually, wrestling this blow up doll and getting hit with moves and things.
yeah,
And he doesn't like that. He doesn't like it when
he,
people make wrestling look fake.
yeah. They were the
okay.
he kind of, in his view, they're kind of like the TikTok of wrestling.
Well,
Yes.
they are, and you guys are
Yeah.
telling me that
So
Kenny Omega is you don't like him because of the stuff he does. Because I don't know. All I did was watch a match with him, a couple matches with him wrestling. I didn't hear him speaking really at all. But in the ring, the dude is the real deal, though. That's a
Yes.
wrestler.
No,
he's got
Cornette will even say that if he could get his brain cleaned out, Kenny Omega, if he could get deprogrammed from this nonsense that he believes about, what wrestling is, he could be a fantastic wrestler. He's great. He's
he's got
obviously
amazing
very
athletic
athletic.
ability.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, he's smooth and fluid, but he makes dumb decisions. And
yeah.
Cornette,
Like he
one of the only thing Cornette seems to genuinely be something that if you are, he will not forgive you is if you make wrestling look stupid. If you
yeah.
do
Okay.
that, he'll
and
never
that's
let it
why
go.
he has a
Does he?
problem then because of, like you said, the gimmick matches, the blow up dolls, that
Does
stuff.
he not remember that jacket?
Well, I mean, well, dude,
Has he
it's
forgotten the honky
do
tonk
as
man,
do as
sir?
I say, not do as I say, not as I do as I say, not as I do.
That's
I
right.
guess. But
So
whatever, because I grew up during that period.
yeah,
But Bobby Heenan, this guy was the best heel manager of all time. He's also a great mic guy.
Yep.
We know he's really important to
another one of
wrestling.
those guys that did a lot of stuff behind the scenes as well.
Hmm.
This dude
Yep.
was like, we talk about guys like William Regal. I think is like today. He's probably like the greatest wrestling mind alive. Keenan was that long before he was there. So
Yep, yep, no, he's amazing.
And he was actually, as a character, even and in real life to some degree, he was a manager. Like he
yes,
had multiple clients, and he provided them with as much value as he could, and coached them and things. And he was always putting them over. And one
Oh
of the
yeah,
best, the reason why people love him as a commentator, I would say, the main reason is because his character never changed. He
nope.
was always the weasel, and it never changed. From
And not
moment
only that,
one
but
when he picked up a mic. He was always the same guy, even when other people like Hulk Hogan changed.
yep,
His
he's
opinion of
still
Hogan never changed.
yeah. When Hogan became a heel, literally the best part of that was when Bobby was like, "I told you so.
I told
I
you
told
so.
you. I told you since the beginning." And
right, right,
it
right.
was awesome to see, like literally like 15 years in the making. And it was like, holy crap, that was awesome.
Now, keep in mind, just like with Gorilla Monsoon, you might not have realized Bobby the Brain Heenan was a
Yep.
wrestler in the beginning. He was a wrestler too,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
and a
And
good
that's
one.
the other thing too. Like this dude could put over anybody.
oh yeah, he was really good at it. Yep, he was.
Yeah.
All right, moving down here to 1,000 Masks. Mil
Mil
Good old Mil.
Mascaras.
Mascaras. Of course, this guy is. I think he's still talking, isn't he? I mean, I've seen him recently, or I think it was him. But this guy in Mexico is one of the most famous luchadors ever, dude.
Probably
He's a big
probably
deal.
probably the most famous wrestler to come out of friggin' Mexico.
Yeah, maybe. But there's been several. They really love their wrestling down there, and we haven't really talked about Mexican wrestling or British wrestling or Japanese wrestling very much because they all have their own little niches and styles. The Mexicans are one of the most prominent wrestling cultures on earth, without question.
Mhm.
And Unfortunately, it doesn't translate as well as it should because of the translation. And I
Yeah,
think that's the problem. It's the language barriers, but it's also because I don't know about you guys, but me personally, the aesthetic of Mexican culture, the aesthetic of Indian culture,
Mm,
in actually India, I don't like it at all. It's very
yeah.
colorful and gaudy. I
Yes.
personally don't like it. But that has nothing to do with anything. That's my personal choice. But I feel that there's a lot of people who agree with me.
Well, it translates into their actual wrestling too. Like
It
I don't know about
Mhm.
does.
India specifically, but definitely lucha libre. It's just too much. Like there's a whole lot of stuff going on that just simply shouldn't be
There's
going
a
on.
there's a lot of pageantry.
There is.
Yes.
Yes.
A
Yeah.
lot, and the same thing you can say the same thing for Japan, which is why
Yes.
so
Yep.
many old school. If you look at like New Japan, even modern day New Japan, um, a lot of old school wrestling fans just can't get behind it. Like especially was it Joshi wrestling? That
Mm,
is crazy.
Right.
yeah.
It's just it's like anime come to life. It's like all sparkles and shit, and everyone's like,
Well,
"This
not
is
Right.
only just
garbage."
not even just that, like even their moves are more
Yeah,
outrageous, right? They're
super
Yeah.
doing these
flamboyant.
ridiculous
It's
flips, and it's
gymnastic
too. It's
dancers instead of
yeah, it's
Yes.
too
wrestlers. Yeah.
much for me personally. I mean, there's some guys obviously who are spectacular, like your Rey Mysterios and
Oh yeah.
whatever,
Ray's
but
amazing.
there's a limit to it. Like in the guys who did come up here and make themselves into something, they figured that out very quickly. Like your Eddie Guerreros or your whatever.
Yeah.
That the real wrestling market in the North America, the big one, they don't like that as much. Now that we like it, we like to watch guys dive off of crazy stuff, but
But
it
not every
needs to
10
be
seconds.
yeah, yes, exactly. It needs to be
Right.
paced
Yeah.
out well. It needs
Yeah.
to make sense. It needs to
Yeah.
look good. It needs to look like it's going to hurt. It shouldn't just be a gymnastics routine where it's back and forth, back and forth. Now it's my turn to flip. Now it's your turn to do a flip. Now you need to
Yeah.
do a flip this way, and it's just not
Yeah,
for me. But you know
which was
what?
a problem that AEW had in the beginning.
Yeah. Well,
Like
they've had it
I think
very
they
everybody
recently
still
too.
do.
well,
Yeah.
dude, nowhere
It was
near as
even
bad as
worse
it
in the
was.
beginning, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the
But
beginning,
what's
there
happened
was
now is that
literally whole segments, Chester, of a match where
where everybody
the
would just
guys
one
would
guy would do a
basically
flip
just
and then
congregate into all the people in the match. Say there's 6 people in this match for whatever reason, they would all somehow congregate and stay there and wait for the guy to do all of his moves to get ready for his flip, and it was so obvious that
yeah.
it was
Like
ridiculous.
JR actually it was JR who called it out and then they stopped
Yeah,
doing that. They stopped doing it as much, but what they got really good at was changing their camera angle so you didn't see
yep.
it.
So you don't see it,
But JR, yeah,
but
JR was like, it's like a bunch of freaking lemmings.
but yeah, because Jr.
Yeah.
JR's old school. He's like, what is this? This looks
Well,
Yeah.
ridiculous.
one thing I've noticed about today that puts me off a little bit is there's too much of the hour or hour and a half, depending on how long the show is. There's too
Yep.
much of that time wasted on story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
agree.
story is important. I get it. It's a major part of wrestling, but too much is wasted on it. I want to see him in
Yes.
the ring, dude. Right?
Yeah,
And
WWE under Vince was really that when we said that wrestling sucked from like 2015 all the way up until about a year ago, that's what we're talking about. You could go like Raw would start and you wouldn't have a wrestling match for the entire first hour.
Yep.
yeah, no, it's
Or it would,
ridiculous,
or you'd
dude.
have like a 3-minute match,
Right,
if
some
Yeah.
anything, right?
story
It'd be
match
real short.
or and
On
then
your yeah.
Yep.
these days they're also having to throw chicks in. So that's another
Yep.
fast forward. So I have all this story and all these chicks. It's like how many
Dude,
in 1 hour I get like one match, dude.
what's
Yep.
really sad is like about like right around like when Triple H was in charge of NXT, he put together a really good women's division. Like really good. And then Vince, over the course of like the next, when he called him up to the main roster, over the course of like the next 3 or 4 years, he completely destroyed it.
Bob,
Yep.
Bob,
It
put
was
your hand
awful.
out. Put your hand out.
Uh-oh. Here it
Nope,
comes.
Put it
nope.
out.
Oh,
Put it out.
no, he put no. There was a he had a really good core of women wrestlers.
Admonishment,
They
Bob.
they looked good, and here's the thing: they also looked good.
Chester, my
Yes.
friend, when you get a moment,
No.
if you can find it,
Mm-mm.
I want you to watch the match from last night, which was the opening match of the show between Bianca Belair and Io. Her name's Io Shirai, but they call
Io
it Io
Shirai, yeah.
Shirai.
Well, yeah, that's another stupid thing that Vince did.
Phenomenal
You
It
wrestling.
was really
completely
good.
missed the point. I'm not saying at all that women can't do it. Of course they can get up there and dance around. It's all choreographed, well, at least to a point,
To a degree.
to a degree. Of course they can do it. I'm not saying I'm not questioning that. I have no interest at all in seeing women in violence. None.
I know.
I understand.
But my point is, there have been one of the main complaints a lot of people have, and I'm with you on this, is especially the women suck. So many
Yeah.
of these women
Oh
have no
God.
business on television doing this job in every
AEW's
company.
the women's division
AEW
is
is
freaking
worse.
awful.
But I was telling the wife last night because she was watching it with me until she got too tired and went to bed. And the opening match was a women's match with Bianca and Io, like I said. And I said, man, it's just night and day. Like Bianca
Yep.
and Io are so much better than anyone in AEW is. Just all of them. They're just this match alone. And these aren't Bianca's one of their champions, obviously, but Io is effectively a jobber most of the time. And this
Well, she
match
is.
alone,
She is since she got called up for the main
yes,
roster. Yeah.
this match alone is better than anything AEW's put on, and
Ever.
most of the men have put on in
Yeah.
years.
Well, women in wrestling should be 3 minutes. They should rub against each other and their boobs should pop out. And that's all we need. Thank you, sir. Moving on from the man of 1,000 masks, Mil Mascaras,
Yep.
into Terry Funk, baby. He's
Good
Hardcore
old
Terry
Terry.
Funk.
hardcore. But now Terry is very interesting because he's an old dude. But and they talk about him going from NWA into the ECW. And I remember him in that, dude. He was an older guy, but he was throwing his body and damaging himself happily with the young boys.
Yeah.
Terry is interesting. He and I just saw him wrestle not long ago, dude. I mean,
Yep.
it was 10 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. He wrestled all the way up until he was about almost 70.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, crazy,
Yeah.
crazy old man.
Yeah. He was the original. He was the original Mankind before Mankind showed up.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. Terry Funk. Now, anyway, the last little bit I wanted to look at here is I want to look at a style of wrestling. What if we're going to sit here and talk about what kind of character and what kind of style can you put forward, right? We have big
Mhm.
man, right?
Yep.
Which seems to be very popular. I never cared for it personally, but it's very, very popular. You have the technicians like Kurt Hennig or
Yeah.
Bret
Bret
Hart
Hart.
or something like that.
Art Brian
Uh,
Danielson. Yep.
right. Yeah, Brian Danielson's a good example. So you got the technicians. You have the, the clown, I guess you would call it.
The
Like
joke wrestlers
the
like
joke
Orange
wrestler, like
Cassidy
Mankind.
and
Yeah.
yep.
You have your gymnastic dancers,
Yeah, that's gymnasts.
right?
Your high
Plenty of those
flyers.
guys,
Yeah.
high flyers, and they can be quite entertaining. I'm not taking anything away from them.
Yep.
But unless I'm mistaken, the last group would be your brawlers.
Yeah.
Um,
Your hardcores.
your hardcore brawlers. And the thing with that is my favorite is certainly going to be the technician, right? That's my favorite, right? But
Mhm.
the brawlers do tend to mix a little bit of everything, don't they? Right?
Yes.
They're actually the middle ground wrestler, I personally think. You guys
I
correct me
agree.
if I'm wrong, but I really feel because you'll see a little bit of everything from a brawler. And I would consider Steve Austin to be a brawler, right?
Yeah.
And when he was Stone Cold, yeah.
Yeah, Stone
Yeah. When it
Cold.
was Stone Cold. Yeah.
We're going to take a look at that particular set of people, and the 25 roughest brawlers in wrestling history. What
Well,
a
there's one of
face
them right there.
right there. Yes.
Yeah.
But
One of the few dudes who could actually probably beat everybody in the locker room.
yeah,
Yes.
no, he's legit.
Except
He
Kurt
is.
Angle. Kurt used to beat his ass
Yeah.
when they'd wrestle.
Oh, Kurt used to put him in a pretzel, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
Dude,
Kurt
those
is
stories are
also,
hilarious.
but Kurt's a legitimate Olympic gold
Yeah.
medalist. I
Oh,
mean, legitimate.
Kurt's
Right?
Kurt's like a legit tough guy, man. He's a badass.
He is. But
Brock
anyway, let's
definitely
take a
got
look
his
at this
teeth
list.
fixed, though. Look at those teeth.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Brock.
Now,
Old
Sheamus.
Shamey.
Now,
Old
I,
As
Shamu
a
himself.
wrestler, yeah,
is he a brawler though?
He is definitely now.
he
He
is.
When he
You know,
never
first
say. I
I
haven't
don't
came
think
seen
in,
him in a long
he
time.
originally. Yeah, originally he was more of a well-rounded guy,
yeah,
like you were
kind of a
saying.
middle
But
road
yeah, he
like Tech.
developed. Yeah, he developed into like just a pure brawler.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. Because when I remember seeing him originally, I kind of would classify him as a big guy. He
yeah.
kind of
He was
He
fell
kind of
into
was.
that
he was
category.
one of those guys that was kind of in like he could be the big power guy, but he could also be the not he wasn't a mat wrestler. He was just a like a all around guy. You know what I mean?
Right. Certainly not a mat wrestler. And outside of kayfabe, a lot of these guys have stories, and some of them are quite inspiring. Love of wrestling. Danny O'Brienson is a good example, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But he's very interesting because he's one of these guys that learned to fight before he learned to wrestle, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the reason he did it was even though he's a ginger in Gingerland, right? Um, he is he is without pigment, right? And no, he is. He's completely lacking it. And he got picked on as a kid a lot for that, and he had to kind of work his way through that. And he's one of these guys that learned to fight to protect himself because he get picked on and beat up all the time. I
Dude,
actually
and they know it too, man, because one of his moves was called white noise.
right. But the thing with Sheamus though, because his character is completely different than his true self, of course, kayfabe. But I've always kind of rooted for Sheamus,
Yeah. He's a good dude.
He's fun. He's a fun dude.
Yeah, he is. And he loves the industry and he works hard. And I'm glad to see he's still around, because not a lot of those guys don't
He's
last.
having his he's having his probably the best part of his whole career right now. Actually, last
Yeah, he
8 months or
he
so,
definitely had a resurgence the last couple of years.
he's been
So,
killing it.
what kind of
Yep.
cartoon character is he playing now?
No, he's just a brawler. Just straight.
Uh,
Just an
well, well,
Irish
for
baller. Okay.
for a
Yep.
little while, yeah, he was it was like a Peaky Blinders kind of character.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. That makes
and then
sense.
they did the same thing to his group. So
Yeah. Well, old Sheamus starting out I wouldn't have thought to put him in this list, but okay. Obviously, this guy
Yeah.
is famous for being wickedly
yeah,
rough. Most people probably don't know him. I joked about him because he's not near me. Earlier. Dick, maybe you should change your name, Dick. But this guy was very, very rough. Would you? I don't know. Is he a brawler, or as in this thing says, a bruiser?
by
Because
that, by those standards, back in the day, definitely he was more
all
of a
right,
yeah,
brawler.
yeah, because
and he was
he seemed like he
he was
just
a
wanted to hurt
big
people,
dude.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was dude, and he was a thick dude, man. He was only like 6 foot, but he weighed like 260 pounds.
Yeah.
Yep.
He could
Yeah,
hurt people.
he could
He
hurt
did. He
people.
was mean. He's mean SOB. It's kind of like Harley Race, very
Yeah,
similar. Harley. This is of course a decade before Harley. Well, no, Harley was probably starting out in this time too. But Harley is the '60s guys really. But Harley Race is, he was an asshole in real life too.
yeah,
He-
Yeah, as was this guy. Dick the Bruiser, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, man.
yeah,
I loved Hacksaw. Such a cartoonish goof character. But
yeah.
every time
yeah.
he came out, the whole crowd was woo, right? Everybody.
He's the redneck's favorite wrestler.
Oh, dude. Every time he came out, because I saw a lot of wrestling live when I was younger, and because I just lived in a place that was easy to see it, right? But anyway, and Hacksaw during that time he showed up a lot. He was often on the card, and a lot of the stuff I saw would have been would have been black wrestling for sure. Meaning it wasn't on it wasn't being used on the TV, right? It was just
Right.
live matches. But every time he came in, he got such a pop, dude.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
So loved.
Still
and
does.
was another one of those guys that was actually a better wrestler than he actually let on in the ring.
Oh, he could do all kind of stuff. Oh yeah, he was cool,
Yeah,
right?
He still does, Chester. He recently walked out walked somebody out to a boxing match and got a big pop when he came back.
Yep.
Yeah, no, everyone loves him. I don't know what it is about Jim Duggan, but people love Jim Duggan, and maybe it's because he was never a heel, but he was also never a baby face. He's one of
He just was
those.
him.
He was
He was
Yeah.
just
Texan.
Here's a funny story you might not know about him. He recently he took out a home invader who broke into his house.
I like that.
Yeah, back in like December. He took him out with his quote unquote wrestling skill and a 44 Magnum.
Yeah, that probably helped a lot. But I mean,
Yeah.
so you're telling me that criminals these days don't bother to do any research whatsoever because you don't go into
Yeah.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan's house.
Well,
Yeah.
that happened a few years ago to Brian Danielson too. Two guys tried to
Yep.
break into his house in Phoenix or wherever that in
Mhm.
Arizona, and he chased one of them down and subdued him until the police got there.
Tied him into a friggin' knot.
Well, dude, things are out of control, especially in
Yeah.
the cities. Things are out of control. The absolute crazy shit we're seeing. It's never been this way in my lifetime. It has never
Yeah,
been this
not
bad.
good.
And I was in New York in the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
you guys don't even know. But it's out of freaking control, dude. But
yeah.
good for them. Anyway, love you, sir. Dick
Dick
Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Don't know him. I don't know him.
Captain
Yeah.
Redneck.
Yep.
I don't know him.
That's a good way to talk about him, man. Captain Redneck.
Yeah.
He's from the was it
Maybe an AWA
was it,
guy.
no, I think he's back to the territory days, the Jim Crockett days, I think.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, look at him. Look at his physique.
yeah, look at him,
What,
dude.
what kind of wrestler do you think he was?
It looks like a dick. Yeah. Big old.
He
Dude.
was,
This is what I look like. That's my body frame right there. No,
Yeah.
seriously, that's exactly what I look like.
Dirty Dick Murdoch, man.
Yeah.
He
I
was
got my hair is very similar. Shit, I could be this guy. No, my body looks just like that, dude. Yeah.
That's funny.
yeah, but he got but he was around the time of the Funks and I think he was he had a tag team with Dusty Rhodes for a while called the Outlaws or something like that. And
Okay.
he started down south, like Mid South Wrestling, I think is where he started, right around there, and then NWA obviously, and eventually went to WWF where he was I think it was it Adrian Adonis that he was tag team partners with.
I have no
I
clue.
believe so.
It says he's out of Waxahachie, Texas, though. But
Yeah, he's
yeah.
he's an old school dude, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I it's shocking how much I look. My shoulders are a bit wider than his are, though. But yeah, I'm looking in the mirror. Nice, you go, Dick. My hair is almost as gray too. But Dean Ambrose. Now this guy was
Oh,
part
Dean.
of the Roman Reigns
Shield.
thing, the Shield thing. I never
Yeah.
cared much for that whole storyline, to be honest with you. But people seem to like it. This guy is a capable ring worker, though. He is.
Yep.
I personally think
yeah.
the best of those three was Seth Rollins, though.
Seth
Personally,
is the most talented of these
I think
guys.
so. Yeah.
Dean is a very serviceable wrestler.
Yeah, no, he is. He is.
The problem, but Dean's also like I said, he came up in GCW. He's a hardcore guy. He that's like even today, like almost every time he's in a match, he bleeds. So, but he's one of those crazy guys that just loves the hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why he still wrestles in GCW. He was actually their champion for a long time.
Oh, I see.
While he was in AEW. So yeah, he's the guy that likes like the plate glass and the barbed wire, and he's cut from that same cloth that as Mick Foley. So
oh, there you go. Well, he's still over AEW. I saw him.
Oh yeah, he's that guy that I honestly think he's been a little overexposed. Not necessarily his fault though, because of all the stuff that happened with Punk and the backstage things.
Right.
They were desperate to put the spotlight on somebody that could carry the company through the difficult time, and he was the guy that they did it to. So, but
right.
like this dude, he's been trying to go on vacation for like a year and a half. and he can't because
The
something keeps happening. He keeps getting pulled back.
well, the problem with him is he doesn't have a gimmick. Uh,
His gimmick is just he's a mean bastard. That's it.
yeah, but it's not much of a gimmick. He
No.
doesn't have a look. He doesn't have a gimmick. He doesn't stand out to you. And when you watch him in the ring, it's fine. But that's what I mean. Roman Reigns is a pretty boy, but he's nowhere near the wrestler. I'd say either one of them. But Seth
No.
Rollins doesn't have much of a gimmick either. But he's a good-looking fella, and he's really solid wrestler in the ring, dude. Very solid.
He's
Uh,
got
How
kind
he
of
has
a
a gimmick
he's got kind of a
is
it's kind
horrible.
of goofy though. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's
But
stupid.
he is 100%. He's the most charismatic of them. He's definitely the best in-ring
so
technician
why did they go with Roman over Seth? Because Seth would have been a
because
much better
Vince likes
choice.
big guys.
All right.
Because I think Stephanie McMahon wanted to have sex with Roman Reigns, and there you
Well,
go.
all women want to have sex with Roman Reigns.
Well, there you go.
No,
You answered your
but
question.
yeah, Roman is Vince's boy,
No,
and
obviously, yeah, clearly.
yeah,
Because
and yeah,
Cena and Orton were their two boys before Roman came waltzing in,
yeah.
plie-ing into the room. And the story goes, the legend goes, that they were basically handpicked not by Vince, by Stephanie, because
Yeah.
she thought they were hot.
Well, I don't know about Dean, but Seth's pretty
No,
boy.
not
but-
them. No. Orton and Cena, who were the guys before Roman
Oh.
became the guy.
Well, they
Yeah,
are
That's
handsome.
why
men.
they got
Yeah.
to the top of the card the way they did, because Orton started very young. He was a very, very young
Well,
man.
he's a legacy.
Oh
star.
God, yeah.
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 But I can't remember what it was, but for a while there, Cena was about ready to go down the card because he just wasn't getting over well.
Yeah.
And then he had that feud with Triple H that helped kind of revigorate him a little bit.
I see. Yeah, well, I don't have anything against Roman.
Nope.
Good for him. He's certainly not the best. He's not the best wrestler in that situation. But anyway, okay, Dean Ambrose. Oh,
Terry Bam Bam Gordy, man.
Terry Gordy. Jesus, Fabulous Freebirds. Oh, I forgot they existed. But
Dude,
yes, they were a thing. I remember watching the Fabulous Freebirds, dude.
one of the
Yeah.
most like the guy he's in the ring with right there, Steve Williams. That's another dude, man.
Mhm.
I remember they were in the first oh God, what was it called in NWA, where it was the two cages enclosed, two rings
War
enclosed in
Games.
a cage. War game, not well. It's what War Games is based off of.
Yeah.
But freaking Steve Williams, that dude right there, that's the strongest guy I've ever seen on. And him and Terry Gordy were always going at it, especially in New Japan and stuff. Steve Williams picked Terry Gordy up over his freaking head. I mean, legit picked him up and slammed him into the top of the cage like 15 times.
Wow.
Just one after the other, just gorilla pressing this dude over his freaking head. And
Yeah.
Gordy was like 308 pounds at the time.
Wow. Yeah, no,
It's
there's a lot of
ridiculous.
strong dudes in
So-
wrestling, that's for sure.
That's two of the toughest dudes, and that's like two of the toughest, meanest dudes ever in that picture right there.
To be fair, though, I remember the Fabulous Freebirds when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, he particular was always the lame next door nerd metalhead.
Well, he wasn't the front man of the group, man. That was
No, I'm
that was
talking about the other
Hayes.
one. Yeah. What was that? Maybe they tell me here. Buddy Gordy or Buddy Roberts? No.
Buddy Rock. Well, there was the members were Michael P.S. Hayes. He was the leader, but
okay, there you go. It was Michael then. Yeah,
Buddy
that's it.
Roberts and then Terry Gordy.
Yeah, because he
were
stood
the
in the
original,
back. No,
and
you're
then-
right. It's Michael. That's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking of.
And- And then later on, Jimmy Garvin came in.
But anyway, Terry Gordy, dude. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's Flash.
Yeah.
Triple H. Would you?
That
I don't
he-
know, dude.
He started off as more of a technical guy, but he became a brawler when he after he tore his quad and he came back and he was super jacked.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like he didn't just do roids. He burned a friggin'
Steroids.
he burned a friggin' professional bodybuilder and smoked his ashes or something, man.
Something, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he was gigantic when he came back, and then that's when he turned into like a brawler.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I like his entrance. His wrestling in the ring is fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. I don't have anything against Triple H. I'm more interested in him in taking the company forward because he certainly knows his shit. He's well involved. He seems to be from the people backstage that he's very much involved in. Helping and shaping things. So watching and see what he'll do with the future of of it will be interesting. However, I'm not sure if we're going to get it because this purchase by Endeavor, which owns UFC.
That's good. That's
Um,
gonna that's destroyed everything.
I have a
Vince is
feeling,
never. Yeah, Vince is he's slowly wrestling his way back to controlling everything. So
but I still don't understand the purchase though because UFC is legitimate and they want to be seen
Mhm.
legitimate. Why would you put yourself side by side with entertainment?
well, Endeavor when Endeavor bought UFC, a lot of people feel that UFC started to go downhill because of them, because they're more interested in the entertainment value and getting clicks and looks than actually putting on the best freaking shows.
All right.
So them buying WWE totally makes sense because they're an entertainment company. They're not a they're not a sports company. They're
Yeah,
not
So
they're not
they're
combat
buying
sports.
WWE less for the fact that it's wrestling and more for the fact that WWE is probably the best at live events ever.
Yeah, and the biggest brand, one of the biggest brands out there.
so
Their ability to put on a show literally in every possible circumstance when it comes to a country is
Yeah,
second to none. Like the fact, honestly, as good of a businessman, because Vince is very good at the business side of stuff. He doesn't get the credit
yeah,
for that he deserves. As good as he is at it, you would think he would have licensed that out more, but he probably couldn't, mainly just because he was busy running his own stuff. Because they tried it a couple times where they ran other people, like I think they did a Stones concert or something. They ran it
yeah,
for him basically,
yeah,
and
they're good at
it
that.
went off without a hitch, obviously, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Like AEW recently has had a lot of production problems, a lot of sound problems and stuff. In
well, they
WWE,
always have.
that's super rare. That's
Yeah,
super rare that anything
yeah,
like that ever
yeah.
Well,
happens.
they
They
are
There's no
have
doubt
they
professionals.
about
That's
it.
have
true.
yeah they have hands down the most polished
Yeah,
production
It
team
is
in the
I
world.
would say it's
super
too
polished.
polished as far as a
A lot of
product
people think that.
goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's too polished.
It's
Yeah,
Well,
too smooth.
well, that explains why I see some YouTuber is not only fighting in the UFC but also wrestling.
Yes.
yeah.
What's his name?
Yep.
Logan Paul.
Logan Paul.
Logan
And
Paul. Yeah,
the worst part is he's pretty good.
he's
He's
that. Well,
pretty good in the ring.
he's a really athletic guy. He's like they're saying like if he had actually like focused on boxing when he was younger and actually like became a legitimate boxer, he probably would have been a really good boxer.
Now,
So
Logan is the brother is the real moron, right?
yeah, well, they were both complete idiots for a long time. Um, Logan in the last like 4 or 5 years has realized that he did a lot of really stupid and ugly and mean shit, and is
Yes.
legitimately looks like he's trying to change. His brother just doesn't give a crap.
What was the other one? What was the brother's name? He's the moron that came over here to Japan.
Jake
And,
Paul.
yeah,
No,
Jake.
Logan's the one who
Yeah.
was over there.
Oh,
No,
Logan
Logan's
did
the one
that.
who did that. Yeah, and
So
that was kind
Logan's
of that
the
was
idiot. Oh, okay.
well. Look,
Right.
that's the kind of well, that's the thing that kind of got him to start looking in his life, and like, oh man, I really got to stop doing shit like this.
Yeah, no,
Um,
those,
So
they became super YouTube famous though.
yeah,
Yeah.
y-
well,
Anyway,
infamous.
infamous, sure.
Yeah,
Blackjack Mulligan,
Blackjack Mulligan. Yeah, buddy.
big boy.
6'9".
Yep.
Mm, yeah.
That is a
Uh,
large man. That's a
yes,
lot of person.
yes. I think I've only seen a clip of him wrestling. I don't think I've actually seen a match from him. I've seen a clip of him though, in
Yeah,
some kind of
but
documentary.
fathered one of the greatest wrestling family dynasties of all time, the Wyndham family.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. So Mike Rotunda, like these are his grandchildren. Mike Rotunda, Bo Dallas, Bray Wyatt. His son is Barry Wyndham.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, like this, like he basically fathered the Wyndham family.
Wow, that's interesting. So Bray's the biggest hit out of that then. All right.
Well, I would say in the 80s, Barry and Mike were about this more. They weren't as crazy over as Bray was, but they were like super mainstays.
Okay.
Mike
Interesting.
Rotunda, well, he became like when he went to the WWE, he became something stupid. He became IRS. But
Oh, that's the. Oh, okay. All righty.
yeah,
No,
but
all right.
he
So
was part of the he was part of the varsity club when he was in NWA, which was like a much better stable.
Yeah.
Barry was one of the Four Horsemen,
right.
and he was one of the incarnations of the Four Horsemen,
All
and of
right. Well, you
course
got a
then there's Bo
legacy.
Dallas and then Bray. So oh yeah, like 3-4 generations.
Yeah, they did that. The IRS was actually a pretty good in-ring worker. I just don't understand that whole kayfabe though. It was dumb as shit.
It
Yeah,
was because the IRS was screwing with Vince, and he
yeah.
created a
So he
character.
created that character.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. No, I know, but it was a waste of him. This
Yeah,
right here, Rowdy Roddy Piper, is the
the man,
embodiment of a brawler. He
Yep.
and
should
he
be
should be
in the
way
dictionary.
higher on this list.
Yeah, he should be way
Um,
higher than 17.
he
Wow.
might honestly be, when it comes to the job of a professional wrestler. What is their main job? Their main job is to get people to come watch them wrestle. That's it.
Right.
Yep.
Everything else is secondary to that because it doesn't matter if there's no audience. He might be the greatest of all time at that. The
Yeah.
man could
Yeah.
talk people into the building like I've never. There's no one better. Even Ric Flair, who most people would probably say is the best of all time, even he says Roddy Piper was better than him.
Oh no, Roddy's amazing at that, and he's way bigger than you think he is too. He's one of
Yeah, he's
those
not. Yeah.
deceptive guys. Although I wish he didn't get in the ring with his giant dad bod recently. But Roddy is awesome. Love this guy. He's one of the few who made transition into at least one movie as a good actor. Of course,
Oh
Dwayne
yeah, They
Johnson would be
Live.
the biggest, success in that. But They Live is such an epic movie, dude,
I
and
love that.
he's great
The
in it.
best it had for a long time, the best on-screen fight in any movie ever.
Yeah, no, it was great.
The alley fight with him and Keith
Yeah,
David. Holy crap, dude!
yeah.
That fight was so epic.
Keith David's
They
awesome.
actually it was so epic. They recreated it on South Park with the two handicapped characters.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, and of course he's
Yeah.
working here with Dustin, so that's got to be perfect
Yep.
as usual. But Roddy's awesome. The ape. I don't even know who this is.
That's
JBL,
JBL and
Ron Simmons,
uh,
Farouk.
Ron Simmons. Yeah, which Ron Simmons.
Ron
I
Simmons.
honestly think
Okay.
Ron Simmons was the anchor of that team. So
Well, it's
Well,
not. It's not Ron Simmons. It's not Ron Simmons. Who was the
Butch Reed.
No, no, no. Dwayne's grandpa.
Oh, you mean
Or his father.
Rocky Johnson?
Rocky Johnson. There. Thank you.
Yeah. That's it. Soul Man Rocky Johnson. That's his dad.
Yeah, his dad. Yeah. I think his grandfather was a wrestler too, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was
my chief, Peter Maivia.
Peter
Yeah.
Maivia. Yeah.
Yeah. But another legacy. A lot of people might not know that about The Rock, actually.
Yep.
But although those are black men now.
Yeah.
Oh, the Samoan dynasty is legit.
Yeah. Well, it's because Simmons made me think of it because he looks so similar to Rocky Johnson, right? They're very
Very
Yeah,
similar
yeah.
looking
physique.
fellas.
I
Yeah.
think was it Butch Reed or him that he was actually had a tag team with? Oh no, it might have been Ahmed Johnson.
Oh,
But no,
okay.
the APA was a lot of fun. They were the
Yeah.
quintessential brawlers during their time. Bradshaw shifted. He was still a brawler, but he shifted to more of a singles wrestler and became JBL, which is kind of his real name. But yeah, I know APA was awesome. They're still awesome when they show up. They're just fun. They literally, Chester, for a long time, their whole gimmick was they sit around, smoke, drink beer, too much beer,
Uh-huh.
play cards, and then someone would come offer them some money to go beat someone's ass, and they'd do it. That was
Yep.
them. That was their job. They were the acolyte protection agency, and that's what they did.
There
They
you go.
Yep.
protected people.
It was
Sounds like
it was
the
a, it was
Undertaker
a, it
should
was
go
a,
join that.
it was a fun. Well, they
Well,
started
that's
off
where they came from.
the
They were
APA
his
came. They were part
acolytes.
of they were part of the ministry.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And when
Yeah,
that broke up, they stayed together and became the APA, the Acolyte
I
Protection
yeah,
Agency.
hated that stupid name they gave him, though. I hated that Farouk name,
yeah,
dude. Yeah,
Yeah,
he,
Farouk.
yeah. Oh, when there was the Nation of Domination. Yeah, from what I understand, he wasn't a fan of it either.
I did not like it, dude.
That's Vince. That's again. That's a Vince thing.
Well, because we were killing Arabs, so put an Arab name on it,
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah, Vince is simple. He is simple. That is true.
yeah.
Hey,
Let's see
simple
here.
works.
Tommy Dreamer. Now that's an interesting choice.
He's
Tommy
definitely a
Dreamer.
brawler.
He is. Oh,
He
he
shouldn't
definitely.
be higher than fucking Roddy
He should be.
Piper,
Yeah,
though. Jesus.
yeah. There's
And
no way. Yeah. Like
dude,
I would
look,
say Dreamer. Honestly, Dreamer should be a little bit higher than this, but Piper should be like top 5.
look where we
Yeah,
are, though. Look where we are.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Isn't this interesting? Yeah.
But
Um,
again, another guy, Tommy Dreamer, that was so much bigger behind the ring. He was amazing in ECW and as a brawler, but so much more important behind the ring, behind the scenes.
yeah, and he had a dumbass name.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean,
dumb name.
it's ECW.
Just like
It's
Farouk.
ECW, man.
That's true.
ECW had a lot of dumb names.
Yeah, but this is really not a good one.
He did have one of the coolest long run storylines that has ever happened with him
Yeah,
and Raven, though. How he just couldn't
yeah,
beat
oh
Raven.
yeah,
It was so good.
yep.
There you go.
Dr. Death, Steve Williams, baby.
Now this is
There
back
he
when
is.
I was young,
Oh yeah.
and Steve Williams or Doctor Death. You would talk about strong men.
Yeah.
Oh
This guy.
God,
Have you ever
this
seen
dude
his
was the
suplex? Have
epitome
you
of it.
ever seen his German suplex, dude?
Yeah. He was a
Dude
beast.
was just
Baby.
one of the strongest people that
Vince
ever
Vince
lived.
Russo torpedoed his a chance to be big in America, but yeah, has become
Yeah.
bigger because they did that stupid brawl for all thing in the
Yep.
like 96, 97, whatever it was. And he was in it. Well, he was supposed to win it because they figured,
Yep.
he's a badass, he'll win it, no problem. And he got by one of the nobodies effectively at the time, Bart Gunn. He just caught him and knocked
Well,
him out. Knocked
the
him
thing
cold.
was, Bart Gunn was actually knew how to box. He
Yeah,
knew how to
They
fight.
put him in there because they think, well, he's a jobber in wrestling, so maybe he's not tough.
Well, the
No,
thing was,
he actually knows how to box.
he went to Vince Russo. Well, first off, Cornette told Vince Russo this because
Yep.
when they were in the boardroom talking about it, he said, "This is the stupidest idea I've ever heard."
Yeah.
It's like, you want these guys to go out and actually fight, and they were legitimately fighting. It was real fights. And he's like, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And Russo's he's like, a lot of these guys, and then Russo's like, "Oh, they won't know the difference." And then Bart Gunn, he's like, he puts Bart Gunn in there, and Cornette knew that Bart could fight.
Yeah.
And he says, "Why?" He's like, and Bart, like, they told him, "We want you to go out here and we want you to actually fight." And Bart went to Russo and said, "Are you sure?
You sure about
Do
that?
you really want me to do this?" And they were like, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it'll be great, man. It'll be good." Because he was
I'm gonna
so
knock him
convinced that
out.
he was so convinced that Steve Williams was going to kill him
Yep.
that he was like, "Oh yeah, just go." And Bart went out there and he just popped the shit out of him.
Now, maybe in a street fight, Dr. Death would have got him, but this was a boxing match.
This was a
There's
boxing
rules.
match. Yeah, he got, yeah. Williams got rocked, and you could see the look on his face. He was like, "Oh crap."
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That
and then because of that, they killed Bart Gunn's career.
Yep.
They blamed him for it.
Well, yeah. Well, it's not. That's how they do. That's one of the things we haven't really got into, the politics of wrestling.
Oh my god.
And boy, is that an ugly corner to go down.
Yeah.
But let's see, the Dudley. Fuck off.
Good old Dudleys.
Chester's
not a fan of the Bubba Ray and the Devon.
No love for Bubba Ray, huh?
No. Dudleys. Van Vader, dude, one of the greatest gimmicks in wrestling history, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean,
Dude,
especially back when he was wearing the helmet.
I was so upset when he stopped wearing the helmet.
Mhm.
I know why he did it, because he couldn't stand it in there. He's like, it was hard to breathe and it smelled. But I'm like, dude, maybe wash it or something.
Yeah, maybe.
But
Give it a try.
yeah,
Now this guy is, he's so over, and he's so much fun, Van Vader. He was a true threat. Every time he came out, that's a threat, right?
Yep.
And there's a
Yeah.
lot of guys who were legitimately great wrestlers, but they didn't have that threat pop that Van Vader had. And the one of the problems with him, and he's certainly a brawler, is this guy is ultra stiff
Yep.
and dangerous, really. But
Well, and again, we talked about the reason that is that he came over from New Japan, and that it was that strong style of wrestling, and that's what they wanted him to do over there. So that's why it's kind of like the situation when Big Show left WCW and went to WWE and realized he didn't know how to wrestle. He didn't know how to do it the way that they wanted him to do it, and he had to completely relearn everything. Vader came over, and he was like so over. They were just like, just do what you do. Like don't bother trying to figure it out. So that's why that's one of the reasons why he was super stiff as well.
yeah, well, he was great though. I mean, because every time he came out, there was a pop, dude. Every time.
Oh God.
And yeah, he was an exciting wrestler because he's a big dude, he's powerful, but he could move. It was amazing how quickly he could move around that ring, dude, for his
It was
size.
like two of the two big guys that I've seen that could move the best. The guys like that size were him and Bam Bam
Yeah,
Bigelow.
Bigelow, yeah, for sure. Yeah, Bigelow got a raw deal, dude. He got a
Oh
raw
yeah,
deal. Bigelow should be a legend guy now.
yeah. But he was another one of those guys that just didn't take any crap.
Yeah, didn't play the game, but I mean, Bigelow off the
No.
top rope, watch out, dude. It's
Yeah.
awesome shit. And he actually wasn't that stiff, Bigelow. It's interesting.
No,
He's
no.
the
Bigelow
opposite
was
of
what
Vader.
Vader could have been.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, oh, the man. Yeah,
Good old Dusty.
good old
Yeah.
Dusty. Only
Gotta
at
get some
11.
color. Gonna get some
It's
color, baby.
interesting.
Dude, is
It's
San
interesting that
Martino
you.
going to be at the top of this list?
I hope not.
He,
It's interesting
he
that
better
you
not
picked
be.
brawler, the brawling style, because
Yep.
I've often said that the brawlers, while personally I much prefer a more technical match like you, Chester, when it comes to the wide audience, when it comes to making wrestling popular, it's the brawlers every time. Like
Yeah, because they're more
they're the
exciting.
ones who,
They are
yeah, they
more.
draw
They,
people in
yeah,
because
Yep.
wrestling should look and feel like a cowboy movie fight. We
yeah.
know in our minds we know we're watching a fake fight,
I will
but we
take a
don't want to
Mr. Perfect match any day. Thank you.
see that. Now I would too, but to the general audience,
We're not
cowboy
casual
movie
fans.
fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not casual fans. So.
Yeah. But no,
Give me a
Dusty's
Chris
great, though.
Benoit versus Eddie Romero match any day of the week and twice on
Oh
Sunday. I watch the
God.
shit
Yeah.
out of that.
No, that's true. Yeah. But I mean, the thing with Dusty, though, I mean, he was a great wrestler. He was a great mic worker. He was, overall a legend, as he should, and he's
Yeah.
acknowledges that. I'm surprised he's so low on the list, to be honest with you. But his contribution to wrestling is beyond the ring. What he's done behind the ring is far more important. And it's
Yeah.
hard. It's weird to say that because it's Dusty, the American Dream Rhodes, dude. But his
Yeah.
behind the scenes stuff is so vital. He's very, very. This is a guy who gave back, plain
Yeah.
and
And
simple, like Diamond.
created a family legacy too, man.
He did. He did. But
Yep.
he's for me, he's in the category of Diamond Dallas Page type of dudes, right? Mick Foley type of dudes.
Yep.
Because no one, the Mick Foley is another guy. We're all like, oh, he's brave, but no one talks about much what he does behind the scenes.
Mhm.
He does a
Oh,
lot.
he's one of their biggest goodwill ambassadors for
He
professional
is,
racing
dude.
too.
He is. Yes. It's
Yeah.
weird with his character about how much kids love him, and he knows
Yeah.
it, and he loves it. But anyway, Dusty, legend. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
They
Harley Race.
got done dirty by Vince.
Oh well, they all
Ye-
have. They all have. But
Yeah.
Dusty, he's been important for, decades upon decades. Harley Race, we already talked about him.
Yeah.
Absolutely a brawler, no question. Stan Hansen.
And the man.
Oh God. Big Stan Hansen. Good
Yeah.
Lord. King of the Lariat.
There's a match with him and I think there was more than one, but there's definitely at least one match with him and Hulk Hogan back in the
Oh
day. Fantastic.
Yeah.
yeah.
Fantastic match.
Yeah.
Because Hansen's just the perfect. It's a shame he never got brought over here to do anything because he's just a perfect foil for Hogan. Perfect.
Yeah.
Because Hogan can't bully him. They're about the same size, and Hansen's way meaner and looks meaner and comes off meaner. Just a perfect matchup.
Yep. He was trained. I think he was trained by the Funks. He was the biggest heel in New Japan for like 5 or 6 years. And just like the dude's just like he's one of those guys that's part of everything, man. He tagged with Bruiser Brody. He created the lariat, like I said. Isn't he the guy that isn't he the guy that ended Bruno Sammartino's career? Like he broke his neck or something, didn't he?
I don't know. I don't know. I know who he is, but I don't know much about Stan Hansen.
Yeah, he might not have ended his career, but I know that it was a botch and he broke friggin' Bruno Sammartino's neck.
That's not good.
Well,
yeah, that accidents happen.
Hansen was a lot bigger over in Japan than he ever was.
Oh, he was massive over there, and his impact over there is still felt today. There's wrestlers over there that emulate him.
Well, cool.
So
You see, I never watched wrestling outside of America. I just never did. So, there you go. I didn't have access to it, I think.
And Hansen in WCW had one of the funniest locker room segments of all time. When, because that was like, remember when that controversy, that lady that tried to go into the men's football locker room and she, yeah, they did a mock version of that, and Missy Hyatt goes in there and Stan Hansen's in there and he spits friggin' tobacco juice all over her. Dude, it's friggin' hilarious.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's so dumb. It's like, no, you don't get to go in the men's locker room. Go away.
Yeah.
Stupid. Can I go into the women's locker room and interview? Can I?
Yeah. Well, today you can't. You can just say you're a woman.
Yeah, that's true. Abdullah. Boy, he's looking heavy here. And Jesus. And keep in mind, Abdullah is the guy who's barely in the picture, not the guy in the center of the picture.
Yeah,
which is a weird choice of pictures there. WWE.
He'll be down here later.
Well, it's him and Bruiser. Their careers were so intertwined.
Yeah.
And Abdullah with the bringing in the fork. And they like his most memorable matches were with Bruiser. So
right, fair enough. But Abdullah's the guy that wouldn't even bother to ask you; he just cut you.
Yep.
Yeah, he just cut you,
and then he cut himself.
Yeah, and he cut himself, and he do it with dirty razor blades as well. Matter of fact, I think he got in trouble, didn't he? Actually, give someone
there was. Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons why he's in such bad financial shape right now. Is he passed on hepatitis to somebody?
Yeah. You got to be careful with that shit, man. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
But
definitely a brawler.
Absolutely a brawler. Super stiff, rough guy. I mean, you know if you're going to get in the ring with Abdullah that you're going to get hurt. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah.
This guy did not give a shit.
The original New Jack.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people have bad things to say about him, but at the same time, they seem to love him. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, famous, of course. The Undertaker. Oh God, a brawler? Really?
The way they always classified him, especially later in his career, was a striker.
Yeah,
they would always say he's the best striker, best pure striker.
Big man is what he is.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree. I like that shot there of Punk though. It looks like he's
slapping the shit up.
Anytime that Punk looks in pain is good for me. I've never cared for him. I mean, he's just doing his job, and that's all. That's fine, But I've never liked Punk.
He's a diva, so
he is.
But Taker's one of those guys who it depends who he's with. Like if he's in there with like I don't know Shawn Michaels, then he's more of a showman. He's more of a your showy type wrestler like Michaels is. He's not going to go out there and have these. Well, depending on the match, I guess the first Hell in the Cell match was pretty damn brawlery. So it just depends. Like he's kind of chameleon-esque. I think Big Man is probably the best one because that's what he is most of the time. But one of the best things about the Undertaker was he was just fucking good at all of them.
He's that guy
the only thing he couldn't do was fly, really, and he'd still do that sometimes.
Oh no, he could do that. Oh no, he in his early career he could do that too, but they told him not to. He was like, dude, you don't have to do that crap. Dude, he used to do over the top ropes suicidas over the and really? Vince was like, yeah, I don't ever want to see you do that again. Dude, there's footage of him doing it as the Undertaker.
He did it at WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels. and the cameraman, stuntman, botched it and nearly killed him. Nearly
Oh
landed on
Yeah.
his
wow,
face.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just would not put him in this category. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I love the Undertaker, but nope, I wouldn't do it. Road
There they
Warriors,
are.
Definitely.
here you go. All right,
There's
Definitely.
brawlers.
legit, legit. These guys, they got themselves in trouble so many times because they were told to do this, and they were like, "Huh," and didn't do it.
Yes.
These guys, these you see them here finally on WWF, but these are WCW people. That's what they are.
Yeah.
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 And
Um,
they like you said, not the most skilled in the ring, super stiff, but man, like you want to talk about the epitome of what a brawler is supposed to
oh
be.
yeah,
Both of
very
these guys.
entertaining. Yeah,
And a
these guys.
draw.
Yeah, yeah.
The number
Yeah.
one job of a wrestler is to get people to show up. And the Road
Yep.
Warriors come to town, all the wrestlers wanted on the card because they knew they were going to get paid.
Yep.
Yep.
No, these guys
I
were
think
hugely over, and they were amazingly fun in the ring. Just really fun.
In
yeah.
fact,
And
they were so over that for years wrestlers called when you got a nice pop, it was a Road Warriors pop because
yep.
the crowd was just so loud for these dudes.
Mhm, mhm. And then finally, they did bring him in WWF, and they put him against Demolition, the fake Road Warriors, and
Yep.
boy, was it obvious. Did you guys see that match?
Oh yeah.
Holy dude!
Talk about a pop though.
Oh
That
yeah,
Yeah.
match,
yeah.
that was like a dream match at the time.
It was, it was, it was. But it
Yeah.
was very clear that Demolition was not even close to being what these two,
Well, the
Hawk
two
and
guys
Animal.
that were was it one of the was it uh Axe from the guy from Demolition.
Axis
He was
match.
actually towards the end of his career at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
And as a matter of fact, it wasn't long after that he basically became a manager for Demolition when they added Crush to it. So
I remember seeing a match with these guys, and they came out. It was clearly a spot, right?
yeah,
But they came out to the ring. They were fighting. It was old school, a couple old school guys. But they came out and they didn't even get in the ring. They just started taking the commentator table and chairs and just started throwing them in the ring at them, right? And the guys in the ring are getting mad and they come out and want to fight. And these two guys just beat the shit out of them, banged them into the side of the thing, threw it in, and then threw more chairs and tables on top of them and walked out.
yeah.
Yeah, the Road Warriors.
That's them in a nutshell, man.
It is. They're
Just come in
awesome.
and wreck shit.
This wreck shit. Yeah, it was great. Okay, here he is, Bruiser Brody.
Oh man,
There he is.
Absolutely a brawler. Yes,
the
Yeah.
prototype for a brawler.
he was a pretty big dude
Absolutely
too. I
terrific.
think.
He
Yeah,
was
he was
huge,
brawling.
man. He was like like I said, he's 6'8". He was a big dude.
Yeah, he was brawling everybody too. The crowd
Yep.
didn't matter. He was fighting.
Yep.
You
He
got
came in with
way, he was, yeah.
came in with that freaking chain. He was swinging it over his head, and if you were in the crowd and you got hit by it, oh well.
Yep.
Yeah, but
But
keep in mind with him though, he was actually pretty technical as well, though.
he was a
That's what he
very
needed to be.
actually he was a very safe worker,
He was.
except when he was doing those hardcore matches. He would actually and everybody loved him. Everybody loved him, man. That's why when
Yeah,
he
a
was
lot of the
murdered,
guys like to work with him because it
Yeah.
was easy. It was simple.
yeah,
He'd do all the work basically. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was there to do, and he could do it. And all you had to do was just follow along. And there you go. It was kind of like
Yeah.
working. I remember who was it? I think it was like Big E Langston. Big E said his favorite guy to work with was always Big Show because it's easy. You know
Yep.
what you're doing. You know what you're doing because you can't do anything else. He's too damn big. He's not
Yeah.
gonna let you. So and he's so big and strong that when he does a move to you, you would think it would hurt more, but since he's not trying to hurt you, it actually hurts a lot less because he has
Yeah,
so
he
much
was really
control.
Bruiser was really good at taking care of the people in the
Yeah.
ring.
Now, Alan here says, interesting WWE calls them Road Warriors and not Legion of Doom. Now, Legion of Doom, didn't they bring in a third? Didn't they jump the shark with that?
Yes.
That the
Yes.
Legion of Doom, there was a third guy they brought in. I can't remember his name. He had Hawk, Animal, and
Puke.
huh?
It was
That was
Draws.
Draws. Darren Draws. Then they called him Puke.
Yeah.
Was that what they call it? But the
he got-
Legion of Doom
he
was
broke-
was a
yeah.
jumping
He's
the
gonna
shark.
puke. He's gonna puke. He's gonna that Vince. That's a Vince thing.
I see.
There's a famous clip when because that was like one of the reasons why Vince hired him, which was just tell you exactly the way Vince's mind works, was that he claimed he had a skill that he could throw up on demand.
Oh, could
And
he? Oh,
Vince
jeez.
literally during their interview, he wanted him to do it for him, and Vince was like acting like because Vince was an announcer at the time. He was one of the guys in the booth, and he was like, "He's gonna puke! He's gonna puke!" and he
Wow.
couldn't do it because Vince was like so crazy over the top. It's like the first time he couldn't do it.
Aw. But of course, Bruiser Brody. A lot of people these days probably don't know who he is, though.
No,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Terry
a
is.
guy who
Terry.
should have been there a long time.
Yeah, that's true. Terry, we already talked about him. Legacy guy, been around for a long time. Brock Lesnar,
Work
absolute
laser.
brawler, but he's a
Yeah,
real, actual fighter, though. A little bit
yeah.
different. Um, and he showed it. He went over and just took the UFC.
Yeah.
Just took it.
I'll be having that, he said.
Oh, yeah, but having that, just took it.
Uh, and then the best match I've ever seen in the history of wrestling for me, this is a personal thing for me, is when he beat the living fuck out of John Cena at SummerSlam in
Oh my
2015.
god,
I loved every second
dude.
of that match. That match could have went on 10 hours. I'd have been, yep. Brock, what else you got? Hit him with something
Yeah,
else.
yeah. Well, we were talking about Van Vader earlier. He's one of these guys that when he comes out, it's a threat. It's a threat.
Yeah,
Yes.
Um,
to
His
this day.
existence is a threat.
yeah, and
Yeah,
like I saw him on Royal Rumble, he came in and cleaned it and he was solo in the ring for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I know that was kayfabe, but it doesn't matter.
He
This
could
guy,
probably
you
actually
believe it.
do it if he wanted
You
to.
believe exactly. You believe it, and it's funny because, like I said, he just went over and now I'll take that UFC stuff. A lot of guys in wrestling have tried, failed horribly,
yeah.
but CM Punk's the most recent one I think of. Didn't he
Man,
have two
got his
fights,
ass.
lost them both, and actually had his ear cut in half?
Dude,
Something
Wasn't
he
like
his
that.
got
ear dangling off the side of his head in one of those matches?
yeah, he got wrecked. He got absolutely freaking wrecked.
He did.
But and the thing with Brock, if Brock had just been a little bit better striker, because he's like when it comes to his grapple game, he's freaking second to none as far in the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
There's like he's as legit as it gets. It's just his striking was a little suspect, so that when he had a stand up fight, that's when he got hurt because he would get hit in his abdomen and he had that issue. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
If Brock had started young, if there'd been more money in it, that's the only reason why Brock wasn't there.
yeah, that's it. If he started back in the '90s,
Yeah, if UFC had the money that it does now, especially when Brock was doing it, and he had started earlier, he would have been probably one of the most dominant champions of any sport ever. Because
yeah.
he was
yeah,
just he's a freak athlete. He just
He
he's a
is.
is. He
Freak
gorilla.
of
is.
nature.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
ridiculous. And of course,
except
he sells so well because look at him.
yeah.
But
Yes.
the opposite of him is Kimbo, right?
Oh, Kimbo Slice.
Yeah, in the MMA stuff. And it's really Kimbo was such a wonderful man. He was
Yeah.
a good
Mm,
person, and he was very beloved. And talk about pops. He's not a wrestler, but it's a UFC. Talk about pops, right? This guy, he was so beloved, and we lost him.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm telling you, what was that, a decade or 15 years ago or something like that, a decade or so ago. But if he had not died, I bet you he'd be in the WWE right now.
Oh, he might.
Could
Oh,
do.
definitely. He's that kind of a character. There's a funny. You ever hear that story that Brendan Schaub tells about Kimbo Slice?
No,
Because they were on the Ultimate Fighter, and there was a dude, was a one guy on the Ultimate Fighter that was a racist, and he was talking shit. And so Kimbo was going around getting all the black guys, and the dude goes like, go down and beat his ass. And he
right?
goes and gets Brendan Schaub. And he goes, Brendan, wake up, wake up. And Brendan's like, what? What? He goes, bro, we gotta go downstairs. There's some dude talking shit about our people. And Brendan goes, dude, you know I'm not black, right? And he goes, you ain't black. And he starts leaving. He goes, and as he's leaving, he goes, that's why I like Brendan. He don't even know what he is.
Shit. Yeah. No, but Kimbo is he was a really nice person actually. It's hard to
Yeah,
know because he's a street fighter and that got good is what happened. He got lucky,
yeah,
got into the MMA stuff and had a fair few wins. But if you get him on the ground, he's done, right?
Yep.
He just had no ground game. He got a little better there, but I'm just saying that um, it just because we're talking about the crossover. Kimbo Slice. Oh man, it is such a shame that he died. Because I
Yep.
guarantee you'd be seeing him. Because that's one of the most beloved, hardcore fighters I've maybe ever seen. He's so
Yeah.
beloved.
Yeah, he was a
Kimbo.
cool dude.
He was, man. It's a shame.
Yeah.
But anyway,
There he
What
is.
more? What more needs to be said?
why you got to call him Cactus Jack? Just call him Mick Foley, dude. What are you doing?
Yeah. Every incarnation of Mick Foley was basically this.
Cactus
Yeah,
Jack is a fantastic wrestling name, though. It's a
I
good
love
name.
that. I
sure,
love that character.
sure.
I actually like that character more than Mankind.
Oh,
But
way
yeah,
more,
like it's
way more.
they're all
Yes.
friggin' Mick Foley.
Yeah.
So
But Mick Foley's another really good dude. I've never heard a bad word against him. Have you?
The
nope.
reason why Cactus Jack is so cool compared to the other ones, obviously the others aren't meant to be cool, but the reason why his specifically is because he's the opposite of Mick Foley. He is
Yep.
everything Mick Foley actually isn't, right? He's a
Yeah.
complete bastard. He doesn't care if he hurts people. In fact, he quite enjoys it. And Mick is nothing like that in real life. He's the
Mhm.
complete opposite of that. He's a total teddy bear. But
He is.
Cactus is a monster. Like a genuine if a
He's a
serial
serial killer.
killer could be a wrestler. Yeah,
Yeah.
could be a wrestler. That's Cactus Jack.
Yeah. And of course, the thing with Mick is he was more than happy to sacrifice his life for wrestling.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, he
Hell in a
tried.
Cell.
did without
He tried.
hesitation. Not even hesitation. He's
Yeah.
just done. Right?
You want me to jump off it? Yep. Where is it at? I'll jump off it. Find
You
it
want me
for
to
me.
land? Yeah. You want me to land on my head? Gotcha.
You want me to
to
jump straight to the concrete from the ring? I'll do that
Yep.
because he did it all the time for
He did,
years.
yep.
He's paying the
God.
price now, but my God.
Yep.
Well, his the worst one was with the Undertaker there, and that
Yeah.
went a
Hell
little
in a Cell.
sideways. But he survived it, so sweet.
Yep.
Missing teeth, but
There you go. See? At least the list ended with the right one.
Well, yeah, but
Biggest
this list
star in the
isn't right.
business history.
Piper should be somewhere in here. Piper should
Yeah,
be
Piper
Piper
somewhere.
should be.
probably
Piper should be in the
number.
top 10 at least.
He's at minimum,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But other than that, whatever.
I'd switch Piper.
Speaking of Mick Foley,
I'd move everybody up. Put Piper probably at number 2, and then everybody Cactus Jack at number 3.
what
And the
what?
only reason is because Piper was just something. He was a different beast.
Yeah, no, he should be much higher. But which freaking character is Foley playing here?
Dude love.
Dude, love.
Yeah. The worst of them. Yeah.
Get him, Mick. Get him. Steve Austin is a really good ring worker, definitely a brawler style. He's just kind of the guy next door who doesn't give a shit, flip you off. It's his thing. That little beer gimmick he had was clever too.
Yeah.
He said
And
the best thing he ever did is he's the only person to ever successfully market the middle finger.
Yeah,
That's what he did.
That's
Yeah.
true.
It was smart.
I saw
And
someone
dude,
do
you
it to
do-
Mike Tyson once, and that didn't go well.
You know.
He did it to
You
Mike
know.
Tyson once.
Yeah. He did it to Mike
Yeah, that's
Tyson. Yeah.
kayfabe though.
You know Budweiser made more money off of that off of this dude than anybody in
God.
history.
Yeah, well,
So we went from Stone Cold being the face of Bud to
Yeah.
I'm not even
Dylan-
gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there.
I wonder
Yeah.
if he's made a comment regarding this whole debacle with Anheuser-Busch.
I
But
doubt it. He typically
I
stays
doubt
out of
it.
politics.
He stays out. He stays out of stuff pretty much. But I guarantee he's looking at this going, "What the hell?"
yeah, exactly, it's so dumb. I mean, I understand Europeans bought Anheuser-Busch. I get that, but you do realize you're a blue collar company.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And I understand there's a lot of stuff about Dylan, and I've said it before, but I think Dylan got himself in a situation that got out of control. Because if you go look at anything he does, but just particularly that commercial that everyone's talking about, go look at it. It's a comedy routine, is what he's doing. Go look at it.
Yeah.
It's complete, straight up comedy. It's Monty Python. He's just not as good at it as they are. But I'm
Who
just
is?
saying, Dylan got himself in a situation where he was doing satire and trying to be funny, and it got success, and then he had to make a decision. And I think he should have just walked away. But now he's in it, so
Yeah.
um,
That's a
it,
classic narcissist for you, though. So.
it's fair enough. But you know what I'm saying, though, right?
Yeah. It got bigger than expected.
Mm-hmm. got out of control. Because you go watch that commercial with Open Eyes. He is doing a comedy routine, dude. You ever wonder why
Yeah.
he didn't change his name from Dylan? He's still Dylan, right? It's
Well,
a
That's
it's
what.
a it's a it's a comedy routine, dude.
one
And
of the things that is triggering a lot of the people, especially the women, is they agree with you. They think he's doing what they've
They
now
think, yeah,
coined
they
the
think they
phrase
think it's a
woman
gimmick.
face.
Yeah.
it is. He's
Yeah, that
mocking
it's
them.
just a
That's
gimmick.
what he's doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's why a lot of these women are pissed because it's very clear that this isn't real. He's just mocking them. That he's playing a character. And their argument isn't a bad one. If you're going to be the people out here saying blackface is wrong, then what the hell?
No, no,
How is
no,
that
Yeah.
okay?
that's true. No, fair enough. And to be fair, if you, I don't know, I've worked in the entertainment industry for a very long time, so I've
Yeah,
run into the gays quite a bit.
yeah,
And I don't know if you've ever had conversations with them, but the gays, particularly the flamboyant ones, they don't like women very much.
not too
Nope.
much.
They're
No,
kind of
I would say a lot of them
anti-women's.
end up being gay because they just really don't like women. They don't like them.
Yeah, they're
They would
they're they're
rather
not
they
a
would
fan.
rather suck penis than deal with women's shit. That's where
Yes,
they're at.
yes.
That's what they've
So
decided in
for
their
a
life.
gay guy to go full on mocking women in a satire routine that's gone way out of control, not shocking
Yep.
to me at all. Right.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. Not at all.
But but I'm not going to feel bad for Dylan because he's getting paid. But I do think it just past him. It's very different than some of these activist transgenders that are just mean, hateful, toxic people. That's
Well,
not what
here's
Dylan was. It's
the
not.
worst part, in my opinion. Aside from all that, the worst part is it's a boycott that's working,
It
except
is.
it's not. All you're doing is killing one brand under this conglomerate, which, by the way, all the other brands in the same conglomerate have gone up to pick up the slack from this one.
Probably.
So they haven't
Yeah.
hurt it. They haven't hurt. No, I know for a fact. I've seen the numbers. They've hurt nobody. They
Yeah,
think
no.
they have.
It's just a
Maybe they'll
statement.
kill the Bud Light brand, but they haven't actually done anything because most, unfortunately, I love them to death. I was them for years. Most of these blue collar people who are the ones who are, like you said, it's a blue collar brand who are upset about it, they don't research. They don't know that these companies are all the same thing. That,
No.
No.
Coors Light is all owned by the same company as Bud Light, and it's all the same thing. They just don't know that. And so they think they're making this big stand, and I guess it is making a statement. Fine, great, I love that. Make more of them, please. But functionally, you're doing nothing.
No.
You're not
Boycotts
doing
Yeah.
never
anything.
work
Well,
anyway. They never
to
work.
to to
And that's why they
well
didn't
to
apologize.
be well to be fair, Bud Light is their biggest brand though.
Yeah.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Well,
Yes.
not anymore. Now it's
Well
Coors
it's
Light.
well not anymore. Yeah. Now I think it's Coors or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
always drank Michelob
yep.
anyway from
But
Anheuser-Busch. So.
this is
I've never understood why anybody drinks beer. It tastes like swill. It's horrible.
Yeah.
especially Bud Light.
Well, any light beer.
But gentlemen, I got 15 minutes to get ready for work. This was fun. Let's do it again next week.
Yeah. No, come on back, dude. Wrestling is always fun. And
Yep.
I'm
Wrasle
way past
Wrasle.
my time. So I got to
Yeah,
go
and
as
if
well.
you guys get a chance, like if you guys want to stop over on Tuesday over on the Wrestling Council and talk more of this shit, you're welcome.
Dude, awesome. Go check it out, guys. Alrighty then. You should drop the link in the chat, dude.
I will.
Yeah. Anyway, I am past my time as well. I definitely need to go. So thank you very much, everybody, coming in. And we had some interesting conversations today. A little bit in depth of wrestling. I'm glad I could hang because I'm nowhere near as knowledgeable of wrestling as other people. But I was able to hang in pretty well today, I think.
Yeah.
There was only a few I didn't know. So I'm proud of myself. But thank you very
I'm
much,
happy
Bob.
for you.
Thank you.
Yep,
My,
yep.
my my happiness is important. But we'll see you guys all later. And 2 days, of course, we're going to continue with Umbral coming toward the end of that. But go ahead, Thundero. Take us out of here, man.
I have one. I don't think I've ever done this one before, Chester, but I like it. It's about fear.
Ooh.
Fear breaks all good men who let it. Fear is a tool, a hammer. It will either hit nails, smash walls, or break you if you let it.
Hmm.
Don't let it.
Yes, fine. Fear is the mind killer. Later.